order at 6:03. Just a quick reminder, if you could make sure that you sign in. Can everybody hear me okay? No. Can you hear me now? I should know how to use this microphone by now, thank you. Could you please make sure that you've signed in on the attendance sheet? If you want to speak on the turf, either pro-natural grass, pro-artificial turf, any kind of turf discussion, please sign up on the turf sheet if you are in some way connected to WSESD as a parent, citizen, staff member, or student. If you are not from the district and you want to speak, there's a separate sign-in sheet because the board has to agree to hear from people that are not connected to the district. If you want to speak on a different agenda item, there's a third sign-in list. So make sure you get those. You can sign in later, but it's just easier if you do it now, please. And with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes on October 2nd.
Move.
Thank you, David. And Sean, thank you for the second. Any discussion? I just have one correction. Tim and Wendy, it said that on the communications from the last meeting, that I will send them out, and it should say that I had sent them out to the board. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the approval of the minutes of October 2nd, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. It's on. It is. Okay, so we will actually be having an executive session, and if it is okay with the board, we're going to put them before new business after all the turf discussions so that principals can go home and go to bed. Is that acceptable to the board?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll be having 2 executive sessions before item number 7. Welcome visitors. There are bathrooms over there. Drinking fountain in the hallway. Drinking fountain, that's not the best one to use. And again, if you're just coming in, please make sure you've signed in, and if you want to speak, sign one of the speaker lists. Communications. I sent out the communications to everyone, and I had some written communications that I just passed out. There's 2 different written communications I passed out to the board. Does anybody have any other communications to share? Excellent. We're clicking right through. We should be done by 7:30 tonight. And Lila, is there administrative updates today?
So,
first, we have a retirement at the end of the year. Dear Lyle, I've decided to retire from my position of art teacher at the Brattleboro Area Middle School at the end of the 2019-2020 school year. It's been quite a journey. Sincerely, Ginny Rockwood. So I would request that you approve Ginny's request to retire.
I would accept a motion to accept with regret the resignation of Ginny Rockwood.
So moved.
Thank you, Ann. Is there a second? Thank you, Emily, on the second. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? The ayes have it. The resignation is accepted.
And I have a request to be let out of a contract from Catherine Mason. Catherine is currently the counselor at Oak Grove School, and she is requesting to be released from her contract as of the end of November. I've been working with Mary Kaufman, the principal at Oak Grove, and we've made it clear that she will have to continue with us until we've been able to find a suitable replacement. But it is actually up to you to release her or not.
So the motion to release her when it's replacement. So I would entertain a motion to accept with regret the resignation when a suitable
Can you use the mic, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
I would entertain a motion to accept with regret the resignation when a suitable replacement is found of Catherine Mason.
So moved.
Thank you, David.
Second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor of accepting with regret the resignation of Catherine Mason, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The resignation has been accepted.
Just a couple other quick things. Yesterday was professional development for all teachers, pre-K through 12. Pre-K to 6 met in a workshop model at Academy School. And then as grade level teams in the afternoon, 7 to 12 met in cohort groups at BAMS in the morning, and then in the afternoon worked on report card language, trauma-informed work at the high school. Let's see. And today I met with the road crews bus company to talk about school closures. The road crews and the bus company seem to appreciate the 2-hour delay that we implemented last year. Gives everyone a little more time to decide whether or not roads will be ready. And just a reminder that what's happening in people's backyard is not necessarily what's happening in the hill country. So sometimes you might be in downtown Brattleboro and it looks lovely, and you might be on Sunset Lake and there's 3 feet of snow. So I always use the advice of the people out plowing the roads, and if any town can't have their roads safe for buses, then school will be closed.
Thank you, Lyle. Moving on to unfinished business, we have the policy H3 that was sent to everybody, use of facilities, up for adoption. We tabled this from the last meeting because we were dropping like flies due to illness. I would accept a motion to approve policy H3, use of facilities.
So moved.
Thank you, Tim. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ann. Any discussion?
Yes, Sean Murphy.
Here.
Right. There's been a lot of discussion about this in the Policy and Amendment Committee, and I find that I can't vote in favor of it, even though it probably makes sense as far as the law goes, but I'm going to vote against it. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any public comment?
Thank you, Gary Brattleboro. Are there any significant changes from the old policy to the new adoption that the public should be aware of, that they might want to comment on if they hear what, I was at a meeting when you first got together when this was a hot topic discussion about a rental, and so I'm wondering what has transpired in the policy, especially pertaining to that group.
So the board has modified the policy to conform with recommended policies by the VSBA, the ACLU, to make sure that activities that are going on in the school have a disclaimer to say that the school, much like if you get a notice home from any activity that goes home in a backpack, if you're publicizing use of a school facility, you will have disclaimer language on it to say the school neither endorses or supports the use of the school for this activity, because there's been some confusion when people are using the school that it is a school activity. But our choice legally is to open the schools for public use to everyone, or to close them to everyone of the same group. So you can't say yes to a church group and no to the Boys, and no to a church group and yes to the Boy Scouts, or something like that. So we were looking to keep the schools open, but make sure the public understood that the school does not endorse any groups that use the buildings.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of approval of the policy H3, use of facilities, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays or abstentions?
Nay.
Thank you, Sean. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it, and the policy has passed. Leadership councils is our first reading that was distributed. I think in the interest of time, if you have any concerns about the policy for leadership councils, if you could send those to anybody on the committee, or I chair that committee, that would be helpful. The pre-K partnership agreement.
We have a request from Owl's Nest Preschool to partner with us for a 3-year-old or 4-year-old.
I would entertain a motion to approve the Owltree Pre-K Partnership Agreement.
So moved.
Thank you, Ann. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Any public comment? All those in favor of approving the Pre-K Partnership Agreement with Owltree, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The Pre-K partnership has passed. We had a request at the last meeting that BCTV be requested to film finance committee meetings. And so wanted to check in with the board. And I can see Rich is about to fall off his chair because our meetings are long enough. But it wouldn't involve an extra trip because our finance meetings at this time of year are right before the regular meetings. So we would pay an incremental amount for that extra hour, but it wouldn't be as much as a full meeting. So I wanted to check in with the board about that before our next finance committee meeting. And I would entertain a motion if anybody is interested.
Do you have any idea what that incremental amount will be?
I do not. We could pass a motion up to $100 for the next month, for the next meeting, and then we could come back and decide it as a board. So we could, I could entertain a motion to expend up to $100 for filming of the next finance committee meeting, if the board is interested in moving that.
So I wasn't at the last meeting, so I'm wondering what was the impetus for wanting, is it budget related so the public can know more about the budget process, or?
I think because it's a $52 million budget and there's a lot of money being expended, I think that was where the interest in general came from.
Excuse me, is there a motion on the table?
I'm looking for a motion. Are you going to make a motion?
Sure, I will make that motion.
So you have
We can
moved.
discuss it.
So you have moved that we're rules for a small board, we don't have to have a motion. Your motion is that we expend up to $100 for filming of the next finance committee meeting.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you, Sean. Is there a second?
Second.
That was David? Thank you, David. Any further discussion?
Well, I mentioned last time that once we start, it says finance committee meetings. Once we start the budget development, the finance committee meetings will be an additional meeting in the morning. And I don't believe that that's necessary, probably to have the BCTV come and film that. So there would be the regular, if we could make a friendly amendment that the filming would be the regular meeting prior to the first WSESD meeting of the month. So that's when the finance will meet.
So the motion on the table was just for the next meeting until we know the cost of it, so we could
We
have
could revisit
we
it.
can revisit it, but I just wanted to get it on the agenda so that we could film the next meeting, if that was the will of the board. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Are you ready for a vote?
Question from the floor.
Sorry.
Hi, Mr. Bell. Is this just for the next meeting that's going to be filmed?
Yes.
So the occurrence of a finance committee meeting is not dependent upon being filmed, correct? It's just the next one. So if something to happen in the future where the cameraman can't make it, that finance committee meeting will still take place? And how will you decide which ones do and which ones don't? Thank you.
So the motion was just to have the next meeting filmed in November and expend up to $100 to do that. So we're going to revisit this with a more full board discussion when we don't have so many people waiting, but I didn't want to postpone it because we couldn't have the next one filmed if we don't approve the funding for it now. So that's why I made that very small motion then. All those in favor of approving an expenditure of up to $100 to film the upcoming first meeting in November Finance Committee meeting, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions? The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The motion carries. So, in the interest of moving smoothly through the turf testimony, and we have set aside in our minds at least an hour to take testimony on this, and it looks like we will fill it quite well. We're asking that people sign up on the turf list. I will call 3 people to sit in the on-deck chairs. And John, you were my umpire in the on-deck chairs. So I'll be calling people up 3 at a time and giving you the speaker. So the first name I call goes first, the second name goes second, the third name goes third. In that way, you have a microphone, you can be heard, you don't have to run the microphone. And Sean will be your timekeeper. Look, he's already set up. He is the timekeeper.
When your time's up.
I requested a happy sounding bell. So we're asking that people try to keep their comments to 2 minutes. We have a lot of other business to accomplish tonight. If you go on, you can go on another minute if you need to. You'll hear the bell at 2 minutes. The hard stop is at 3 minutes. I'm going to ask that you address the board and please state your name before you speak. So with that, the first 3 speakers that I have up are Tim Maciel, and I apologize if I mess a name up, Dick DeGray, and Marilyn Chiarella. Yes, Liz.
Are you, from what I understood, you were going to request the turf field and then variations of it.
So anybody,
I'm not sure what you guys are, because you have the RFQs after this. It would be helpful to know.
so this would be a point of clarification that you're asking for. So I have warned it as possible action. If the board is interested in making a decision, that is a possibility. I've had many requests from board members, including a long-serving board member who knows more about this than anybody, that we have time to consider all the testimony and not make a decision tonight. But I have warned it in case I look around and the board is ready to vote one way or the other. I have warned possible action. So the RFPs and RFQs are on there. Does that clarify? Yeah. So if the speaking is, if you want to give public testimony about anything happening on the fields at BUHS complex, pro, against, you should be on the speaker list, and you can come up and sign up if you've missed it.
Tim Maciel, Brattleboro. First, I think it's indisputable that an artificial turf would be much more expensive. The initial installation coupled with replacement disposal costs in 8 to 10 years is just a whole lot more money. With the uncertainty of funding the future, cuts in special education and so on, I think that it would be imprudent to invest in this. But the question remains, BUHS has a problem with its turf. It hasn't been resurfaced since 1965. So the question is, what do you do? I have a short video presentation to show you that there are, without any doubt in my mind, a viable natural turf solution to BUHS's playing field issues.
We're in Forest Park in the city of Springfield. This is the crown jewel of not only Springfield, but of the Pioneer Valley. We have, from Little League Baseball to high school baseball that plays here. We have soccer in the fall, football in the fall. Basically, every age group from T-ball up to adult uses this complex.
So this is our 3rd season implementing an organic management program here on this field, and we've seen results as quick as a year and a half. We saw a noticeable improvement. We can see a real strong natural turf base here of of Kentucky and rye. And being it November, you can see that the program's really taken off, because at this time of year, if there was an abundance of crabgrass and annual weeds, we would have a lot of bare spots, dead spots, a lot of brown. But as you can see, it's lush green grass. It's all highly desirable athletic turf grass. Use has not increased or decreased since we've implemented the program. So as you can see, the grass looks great, and we haven't changed the use at all.
I think by going organic, you'll find that it doesn't really affect your playability. If anything, it's going to make it better.
We do up to 5 series of aeration throughout the year, plus organic fertilizer, which is your nitrogen source, which is what feeds the grass. Through an organic program, you get the soil biology to a level that it's almost naturally maintaining. So you have very little, if any, grub damage, because you have natural microorganisms that fight the grubs. If you get the turf strong enough, it outcompetes the annual weeds. We would put down a fertilizer anyway, so you might as well put down an organic, slow-release nitrogen source. If a natural system is overall better for the environment and for the people, and it isn't any more time-consuming or expensive, then why not?
All of our water here ends up in the Connecticut River, which eventually flows into the Atlantic Ocean. So I think everyone in the Pioneer Valley, it's our goal to start educating our sister cities and towns on the importance of going organic. You just got to start with even one location and do that for a year or two, and you'll quickly find that it's just a lot of it's cultural practices. So if you increase your lawn height to 2.5 inches a mow, if you can aerate 3 to 4 times a year. But just those 2 things alone, aeration and your mowing height, you'll see big results.
Who is also involved with Brattleboro, and he tells me that he would be delighted to work with the powers that be, the school, to provide compost from Brattleboro. So the town of Brattleboro would in effect be contributing its own compost to building a field as strong and beautiful as the fields at West River Park, if you've seen those. So a viable natural grass, there is certainly a viable solution.
Thank you, Tim. Marilyn Chiarello, Brattleboro. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the organically managed natural grass for athletic fields. I've been in touch with people in Springfield, Massachusetts, who are doing that. This video was from there as well. There are many reasons to consider natural grass. When it's managed properly, it's very resilient to constant use. In Springfield, it's used daily by the public as well as by the schools. It's used for multiple sports. And I'm going to just share some data from the case studies in Springfield. They have several sports complexes in their Parks and Rec department that the schools use. I spoke to Randy Pidio, who does the scheduling, and Marshall Field, which is one of the fields in Blunt Park. In the fall season, which is a 14-week season, they have middle school, high school, adult, and youth football and soccer, averaging 4 hours of use per day, total number of hours of 20 hours per week on average. This chart shows the use in the Forest Park complex, which consists of 3 multi-use fields. And I'm just going to go to the totals. Since it's 3 fields, do the math and divide it by 3, and you get 27.5 hours per week of use. In addition, there's games, which I didn't even factor in, but there are some games being held there. So the multiple use for multiple sports and consistent use is being done, and it's done successfully. In addition, it's being used practically 24/7, according to the person who manages the fields. It's constantly being used by the public as well. This is just scheduled use, the formal use, I should say. The environmental considerations are, for me personally, very important ones, and I urge the board to consider that. In terms of ecosystem services, there's no benefit to artificial turf. Artificial turf will kill whatever natural systems there are. The natural grass You have a habitat of healthy organisms, carbon fixation, resilience to flooding and drought, reduction of the heat island effect. Materials, the migration of materials. Just recently, like last week, a report came out identifying that PFAS are now in, or police are discovering that they're in the infill and the blades of the artificial grass that will migrate into our water system and ultimately into the Connecticut River. Water use and irrigation, typically on the artificial turf, it's used to lower the temperature because it could get very hot, up to 160 or more degrees. And with the organically managed, the better the soil gets, the more porous it is and the more able it is to hold in the moisture. I just want to talk briefly, very briefly, about indigenous peoples. The concept of the 7 generations incorporates social and environmental sustainability. And it's
I rang the bell at 2, and the hard close is at 3.
Is there?
3:19.
Oh, I didn't hear
ring
the bell.
again because.
I didn't hear your second bell, sorry. So thank you, sorry, I did not hear the second bell.
Stop?
Yes, that's a hard stop,
Okay.
okay, sorry, I did not hear the
Well,
bell.
I thank you for your time and I urge you to be prudent with your decision making.
Dick DeGray. After Dick DeGray, the next 3 up will be Stuart McDermott, George Cargill, and Eleanor Weiss. We have an on-deck circle to make it go quickly if you want to come on.
I'm declining to come on, I misunderstood the purpose for that list.
Then Liz Adams will be the next speaker.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
can someone seize their time to have that lady continue with her presentation?
We have allowed seating of time before. I will allow seating, the last meeting we allowed seating of time since we don't have a policy. I think I have to keep with the seating of time, so I will allow you to
I
seat.
can't hear you.
I will allow, because we allowed seating of time at the last minute, I believe Jill Stahl-Tyler seated time at the last minute meeting, I will allow you to seat time, your time this week.
Maybe would take her time.
Marilyn, do you want to take the 2 minutes? Sorry, Dan.
I'm sure it does.
Okay, I just wanted to honor the Indigenous Peoples' Day that we just celebrated 2 days ago. The concept of 7 generations in decision-making is a very important one, looking forward 7 generations. Let us maybe pare it down to 2 generations and consider that. Grass is not just sustainable, it's regenerative. And when considering the generations to come, a far wiser investment than the use of synthetic turf. I trust that the board will be prudent in their decisions, and in this case, consider organically managed natural grass for this generation and the generations to come. Thank you for your time. Thank you for ceding your time.
Mr. Gray.
Oops.
Thank you. Dick DeGray, Brattleboro. As I look out over the crowd, and being a former school board member and a former select board member in Brattleboro, this isn't about who brought the most people to speak to you. It really isn't. And you're going to hear all kinds of stories on both sides. I'm more concerned about process and lack thereof. And the word transparency is the most overused word in the vernacular with politicians. And you're politicians, and I'm a former politician. And I didn't think this process was very transparent. From the beginning, I never really knew about it until I saw the former board chair a couple days before they were going to even have the meeting. And so I'm really disappointed in where this is at. And this isn't or shouldn't be us versus them. This is about having all the information, and whether you're a turf supporter or an AstroTurf supporter, If you do this RFP, everything should be included with all the information. I'm a former school board member. I don't know how much money is spent on the field. If it's aerified, how much money is spent on chemicals. I don't believe that there's a sprinkler system there. And I've never heard anybody on the board ask those questions. I did see the field being aerified. I'm a fanatic golfer. My golf course has 28,000 rounds of golf a year with people beating it with sticks. And it's in better shape than that football field is. And I often wonder why. What's the maintenance schedule for it? So for you to make decisions, you should be asking questions like that. And to say, why is this condition? When I heard someone say back in June or July, whenever I was here before, was a student about getting out 2 weeks early. Boy, is that a big deal? Getting out 2 weeks early to practice? What about the schools that don't have these or are never going to have these fields? I mean, the reality is we live in Vermont. I'm a natural turf supporter. But I want you to have all the information that you can possibly have before you make a decision here. In whatever way you vote, it's a big vote because it's going to have a lasting impact. And it's not going to probably change. If you put the field in, it's going to be there in perpetuity. And I'm guessing that if you stay with a schedule of returfing the field, then you're probably going to do it every 7 to 10 years, just like you redo the track. You've got to take care of the things that you own, and you own that turf, and I don't think you've ever done a good job of maintaining your field space. I'm going to walk out the door, and I mean no disrespect to all the people that are going to speak. I have another meeting that starts at 6:30 in the morning. Thank you.
Stuart McDermott?
Hi, my name is Stuart McDermott. I'd like to say that I think you people have a chance at this time to do something remarkable as an example for our country, as an example for our planet. I'm always amazed at how long it takes people to realize the benefits that they can realize. I give a couple of examples. For example, lead. Did you know that in 1918, most of the rest of the world decided to take lead out of their paint? It wasn't until 1968 or 1972 that the United States realized, hey, it's detrimental, we better take lead out of there. Tobacco, we had that for years and years, and we all realized how detrimental it was until finally, after so many years, we accepted the fact that it is detrimental to life. Remember x-rays. I can remember going into a shoe store, putting on my new shoes, sticking my feet into a machine, wiggling my toes, and seeing my x-rayed feet. And then we realized, wait a minute, the judicious use of x-rays needs to be exercised. It's a benefit, but we need to use it judiciously. And plastic, I think, falls into that category too. Plastic is a benefit, but we have to judiciously use it and know how to dispose of it. Heart valves, they're pretty good thing to have. But do we need all the plastic bags, straws, coffee cups? The fleece jacket that you have, you shake that and there's microscopic particles that exist in our environment forever. They're all ingested. Plastic doesn't decompose. Microscopic particles are going to be here forever, and they're going to be detrimental to life. A plastic playground, I don't believe, is not acceptable when a perfectly natural product is available. You have an opportunity to act as a small town for our large planet. Thank you.
George Garvel, West Brattleboro. If we don't put down artificial turf right now, we can always do it in the future. I know that the board has the authority from the voters to go ahead and do this. But I think that came along right at that real confusing time when we were merging the districts. We were looking at court challenges. We weren't sure how budgets were going to work. And I'm not saying that the idea of artificial turf was snuck in. I'm not suggesting anything nefarious, but I am suggesting that it sort of came in under the radar when we were all looking at other things and larger issues. I'd like to urge the board, if it really thinks it needs to go the artificial turf route, to wait a year and bring it to the voters at the appropriate time next spring.
Thank you, Mr. Carville. So Eleanor Weiss, you have ceded your time. So I have Jody Normando. Paul, you ceded your time to Marilyn?
No.
Oh, you didn't? Okay, Jody, Paul, Kate O'Connor.
Jody Normando. I want to start off with saying that it's been bandied about over and over and over again that this was voted on. And some of the board members and other people have read what was the warning for the vote. And I will read it again. The warning for the vote on June 12th was, I move that the voters of the school district authorize the school board to borrow up to $750,000, not to exceed 5 years, for the purpose of necessary capital improvements to the recreational field. There was no mention in there that this was Natteridge Field, or whether it was Sawyer Field, or any of those. There was no mention in that warning that this was going to be artificial turf. If anybody was at that meeting, they found out about it. But 67 people were voting on this huge, huge budget and this big thing that was going to be happening. About half of those people knew what was going on because they were administrators, they were the coaches, they were teachers, they knew. The rest of the people were there did not know what was going to be voted on, and people who were interested in it didn't know that this was happening. So I would like to say that right off the bat. I want to second what Victor Gray and everybody else has said so far. I think it's wonderful to conserve our environment. For a town like Brattleboro, who did away with plastic bags, to be putting something like this in, I do not think it's environmentally friendly at all. I spent the day looking at Google Maps, and I would pass them on to the board if you haven't looked at them, because looking at this, I haven't walked this area, but looking at this, there looks like there's other possibilities for fields. I am a mother of athletes, I'm a grandmother of athletes. I understand that we do need new fields, but I do feel that there are other ways of getting it other than this non-environmental, this un-environmentally friendly process. And so I would urge the board to please take a look at the Google Maps, get out there, walk and see what's there, see if there's any other land we can purchase other than Familari, see what we can reconfigure things. I know that the coaches and the administrators have worked hard on this. I hate to have them lose it all, but I think we can work together and come up with better. I've talked to some of the athletes, and I know there's a lot of them that are for this, but some of the ones that I've talked to are not for it. They're not for it for reasons for playing on it, and they're not for it for reasons of the environment. So, and yes, Sean, I hear you. I will pass it on. Thank you.
I'm not going to take, because I don't want to repeat anything anybody else has said, but the thing that sticks in my mind is when Jody read the warning for the meeting in June, is that that vote was passed. But this is a new board, and this board has to make the decision as to whether or not to go ahead with, in what fashion to go ahead. And I think Dick DeGray hit it right on the head when he said, you need to do your homework, you need to find out what the pros and cons are of turf, what the pros and cons are of natural fields. And I personally would prefer to see you go with a natural field. However, perhaps the board should hire somebody totally independent rather than have the information come from people who've already made up their minds, pro or con, and have a totally independent study from somebody outside of the area, the classic expert who comes in with a briefcase, and make a decision based on it, and have them outline the pros and cons of each alternative, and then go from there. Thank you.
I'm Kate O'Connor, and I'm from Brattleboro, and I want to thank you so much for having this discussion tonight. First, I want to make it perfectly clear, I am not opposed to resurfacing the field. What concerns me is the proposal to limit the RFP options to just one, which in this case is synthetic. There's no harm in including other options, one of which is being discussed by a lot of people here tonight, natural grass. And also, what is rarely mentioned, and I want to stress, is that this is potentially a $1.25 million project. And I think the disbursement of that much taxpayer dollars needs very careful consideration. So I want to thank you for your attention.
Next up, Kim Price, Jeff Brewer, and Liz, did you want to speak? And Liz out.
Hi, Kim Price from Brattleboro. Thank you all. I know it's not a very easy topic for everybody. I am for the turf field. I've had two boys go through the high school. I went to the high school. I watched soccer games being played on the same field that they're still playing on today. It's not safe. Running from turf, from grass to dirt, especially in the rain, is not safe. I know there was talk about putting it off here. We've been putting this off for years, for decades. When do we stop? When do we actually do something that's going to be effective for our students? We talk about wanting to bring people into our community. We need to have the facilities to entice parents to come. We need to have fields that their children will want to play on when they're older. What we have right now is not that. My son was fortunate to play football and soccer, and his biggest dream was to play a soccer game on the football field, which they were not able to do because that field was not possible to play soccer on. It couldn't handle it, and we need to do something about that. And there was a very nice presentation about Springfield. That's a 200-acre area. We don't have 200 acres around the Brattleboro facility to do all of those fields. So as lovely as that was, we can't physically do it. We have a finite space, and we need to take full advantage of it as possible. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jeff Brewer, president of Brattleboro Youth Soccer. We currently play in a Western Mass League, the Roots Soccer League. And yes, we do have one game a season on artificial turf. And the kids love it. It's under the lights. But the caveat was last fall when we tried to finish our tournament, it was canceled because of inclement weather, and no matter what they did to the turf, they plowed it, they kept trying to keep up with the Mother Nature, and we never were able to finish. So turf isn't the end all to everybody's just their goal here. I want to make sure that people know that I do have a growth mindset in this, but I didn't grow up with this clash. I grew up in a different era, and so I do have a fixed mindset. Perhaps I could steer the conversation to something that would reach out and form a relationship with the high school athletic department. We currently are home to the Winston Prouty Center, and we have occupied that space for about 2 years now. We've been very fortunate, and I love what the community is doing up there, Chloe Leary and Lisa Whitney. We've been invited, and we've been guests, and we have had the privilege of using the field, and we'll develop that field into a natural turf, and I would love to be able to share that with other teams, other community members. So I think that's a direction that this conversation could go, where there is available parcels of land to follow up to find other alternatives. I would like to say that, raise some of these points: surface, cost, and future. When artificial gets wet, it's slippery. Burns, injuries, heat, cost. What could you do with $1 million? And the future of longevity of a turf field, I don't think anybody knows what that is. If you're going to use it, certainly the use over the years of multiple teams are using it in practices, it's going to exacerbate that whole process of getting not the full length of turf. And those are my questions. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Ms. Adams, McCartney. I started looking for research on artificial turf, and I found a meta-study, but I didn't get time to finish reading it. It was 90-some-odd pages, where they had pulled together all the legitimate studies to come to a conclusion. And there are problems with artificial turf. I also felt blindsided when the school and coaches were making their pitch for the artificial turf, and at the very end, what did I hear? That field had not been resurfaced since 1965. Drainage has come a long way since then. We have organics, and when I looked for information on natural turf fields, they were using exactly the same grasses that were in that slideshow. So my mind is somewhat open, but I would urge this board to take their time. The $750,000 is not going to cover any resurfacing of those fields, which means we have to borrow more money. What's that going to do to our per pupil cost? Because we are bumping the cap already, and if we have to make payments on a loan, that's going to go in there. And we also have the potential problem with special education. Thanks.
Next up, we have Jeff Stent, Sarah Day, and O'Roy.
Paul Beatty.
Go for it.
Hi, thank you for having this meeting. My name is Jeff Stent. I live here in Brattleboro. And I think this is a really interesting discussion. Can you hear me? Okay. I think this is an interesting discussion. I've argued both sides of this turf gate. And I'm not here really to argue about that. I'm here to discuss and question whether or not this board has the authority to overrule what's already been passed by the previous board and by the public. And according to the Articles of Agreement of the Supervisory Union, the Windham Southeast Unified Union School District, Article 5B states that the new union district shall apply any reserve fund for the fund's specific purpose, if identified, unless otherwise determined through the appropriate legal measures. I'd like to know what those appropriate legal measures have been to try to amend this, if any. Article 14 says you cannot amend Article 5. So the bottom line is you don't have the legal authority to do this. And when we're questioning whether or not the previous meeting on June 12th was warned, I have the article right here, and it talks about what the previous person said about the beginning, but it also talks about Mr. Sawyer said the synthetic field would be easier to maintain, we're free of hours, that's the big reason to get more access to the fields, it was Parent. So it was talked about, it was warned, and if you weren't paying attention, that's a problem. If it's a question about whether or not people understood what was being voted on, well, on June 12th, we all went through that, but Article 2, there was a motion to approve the borrowing for $750,000. And the motion passed by voice vote, and the voters approved the funding. On June 25th, the Windham Southeast School District first annual meeting, Victor Gray queried the board regarding funding the quote-unquote artificial turf field, which was approved on June 12th in the Special District BUHS number 6, BUHS District number 6 meeting. Dr. Rucker addressed the funding, stating that the reserve has sufficient funding for not only the first several payments, but also for the entire project. On June 26th, the reformer article reports that the approval of a $50,000 plus budget included installing of a synthetic field at BUHS. June 27th, the Finance Committee meeting minutes under the capital improvements, they say the same thing, synthetic turf. We're funding it. So this is kind of moved. It's illegal. What's going on?
Point of clarification, I have got a meeting from the BSESD legal counsel that a reserve fund had to be set up specifically for this. And
can't hear you.
Sorry.
I actually talked to the Secretary of State's office about it.
We've gotten legal counsel from the VSBA legal counsel, and Brad James originally gave counsel to the Brattleboro School District that a reserve fund has to be set up specifically for that, as they were told for the addition at Brattleboro High School. So the reserve fund was not set up for funds.
That's not my thing. I'm
Well,
saying this can't be done.
Well, I went to legal authority at the
I was the
VSBA.
Secretary of State, and they said it's that means.
Okay, great.
Hi, my name is Sarah Day. I'm from Brattleboro. Never spoken. I'm going to speak into the microphone. I think it's a great discussion. I wanted to just sort of tell you a little story of our oldest daughter who just graduated from UHS. Cross player, had a great year and really loved playing for UHS. And as a college athlete, I think one of the concerns that I have as a mother that I'm here to talk about is that she really couldn't practice in ways that other student athletes in other Vermont towns can. And particularly as a female, I think that that's really putting our daughters at an extreme disadvantage. And my daughter's pretty lucky. She actually got to go to college, and she's actually a scholarship athlete there playing lacrosse. So not having a turf field put her at a competitive disadvantage versus other students who are competing for that same scholarship money. And also, it's really important to think as a female that that's a significant concern, that the girls are gonna have a hard time practicing. So we really need to factor that in. I encourage the board to really consider the girls here and the female athletes, because we all have to share those same fields. We have finite resources, and what I'm not seeing is a solution that really speaks to the girl athletes that's not turf, because we have to practice early, right? It's Vermont mud season, and turf is ready sooner. And the other thing that I want to kind of bring up is that I haven't seen any clear science from any of the pros on what disadvantages the turf poses from a real scientific perspective. And I want to get respectfully to those that, I know you're very genuine in your belief, but I want to deal with facts and not false equivalence. This is not the same as an x-ray. We shouldn't think about it that way. And I also want to bring up the fact that college teams, where our student athletes are going to go, play on turf fields. So if we don't practice on turf fields, we have a disadvantage in college as well. So we really need to be thinking about our athletes, not just in school, in high school, but beyond, where they need that key practice time, because it's very different playing on grass. You have to be able to do both, but those college fields are turf. And I have sort of a plea that I have 2 smaller girls that are coming up. They're starting their athletic careers at the middle school and elementary school, and I want them to be able to play in ways that are really, really genuine, and I think that we can find a way to do that, but I do want to speak out in favor, particularly for the girls, for turf. Thank you very much.
Just limit the thoughts to the end so we can get through it. A lot of people want to speak and don't have to. I'll be very short and Jane Francois.
Paul B.B. Guilford. My daughter is a sophomore in the high school, and I believe she also is kind of us not having a turf field is a disadvantage to us playing sports against other schools. Also, the school, I think, is going to lose out by not having a turf field in the future. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I believe that the school is going to be at a disadvantage in the future of not having a turf field. And Mr. Stick is very correct. I've been on many boards, and you don't ever overturn a board's decision prior, because if you do that, you violate your own policies. And you have a policy of, that says right here, board member conflict of interest. And it sounds like you have your own conflict of interest because you don't want this, and it's already been voted in.
What?
So,
I'm going to ask that you keep personal, that you can ask the question.
okay. Do you have a policy in your board that says you do not overturn the board's prior?
We do not have a policy that, the high school board has overturned decisions to, last year they overturned a diversity decision, so the prior BUHS board has overturned a policy. We have no, there is no, all decisions, we operate in Robert's Rules of Order. As a point of order, votes can be overturned. So that's part of Robert's Rules of Order.
But this is a year later. Should have been overturned after the meeting.
So I'm a point of order on conflict of interest.
Okay.
You can ask a question about conflict of interest, but there is,
Okay.
this is.
I believe there's a conflict of interest. Thank you.
James Francois?
Hey guys, thank you. I'm Jamie Comtois from Putney. I just want to thank these guys who are primarily, I know they get little money, but are primarily volunteers. So can we please give them some appreciation for all of their work? I served on the Putney Central School Board, and I just know how hard it is to be faced with these difficult decisions, or I can imagine how hard it is. I can't. I also wanted to say, I've got little kids, and I can't wait for them to play sports. And I'm super proud of our region and all of our students. How many student athletes are here? There's student athletes? Thank you for being student athletes. How many parents of student athletes are out there? Woo! How many proud moms of sons are out there? Yeah, student athletes. And moms of girls? Okay. So, yeah. So I feel like, for me, this isn't an issue of us against them. It's not an issue of anything other than it would be nice to have a process. It would be nice to have it documented. And it would be nice for us to publish it. Because one of the challenges after coming to all these boring meetings for months and months and months is that many of us are operating without all the information. And we're doing an us against them when we have only a little bit of the information. So I don't perceive any us's against them. I just would love to have RFPs, to know when the RFPs are going out, that they would include all of the choices, natural grass, synthetic turf, and organic turf. I'd like to know what criteria are being decided. I wrote an entire Excel spreadsheet of all the questions that have come up over the last couple of meetings that I would love to make sure you're considering as a board. Is that 1 minute? Well, 1 minute left. Okay. So I just want to say, though, as somebody who has been doing research on turf since 1999, natural turf, don't ask me why, but I nerded out on this a while ago, and we can do it. We can have an amazing resurfaced natural grass field. We can have our daughters out on it. We can have our sons out on it. I've got one of each. And so we can be competitive, because I could have kicked all your butts, or you could have kicked mine on natural grass. And we can still do that. So I just want to say, instead of us fighting about this, I just hope that we create a clear process. It's published. And because I think a lot of us are just confused and operating in some misinformation land. And I would love to help get that information out as a volunteer.
Break short. Gus Williams, Sarah Tyler Gagnon, up next. Okay, I guess Gus.
All right, hello. My name is Gus Williams. I'm a senior athlete, 2-sport captain at Brattleboro Union High School. I don't really have anything prepared, but I've been following this process since it kind of came to my attention at the beginning of my junior year, so it's been about a year now. I've been to all the school board meetings related to it. I've been to meetings with Mr. Sawyer, Robert Clark, facilities manager, met with prospective construction teams that will be coming to put in the turf field. And I think, as of right now, this is like the best option UHS has for improving our field space and for helping our student athletes gain the space and the correct facilities that they need. We've taken small steps since this project began in 2002. Stevens and Sons, an engineering firm, came and did a feasibility study on the field, right? That started in 2002, 17 years later. We've taken small steps. We removed the grandstands to the other side of Nanowich Field. We put in a lighting system. When we tore up the track last year to redo it, we put a drainage system in as if we were going to put a turf field in. So this is not out of the blue. This is something that the BUHS staff and administration and our athletic director have been working hard on since 2002. And I think, I think there's a lot of misinformation drifting around, and people are curious and there's questions, but I think somehow we need to get something published or an official presentation given so that everyone is on the same page about this process and about where this is going. As a senior athlete and a member of the soccer team this fall, I've seen this field shortage hit my team. We're 11-2 right now. We have our final game of the regular season. We could be 12-2. We could win our league. My coach is in the back, and we've been drifting around through all of the fields this season. I'll finish up quickly. And so as a varsity team, I think it's not really disrespected, but we just feel a little bit disregarded as being pushed to practice on the Fort Dummer infield, while the football team has their temporary practice field, and the JVB has a game on Fort Dummer. And so we get these little crops of grass where we don't really get to practice. It's not beneficial to our team. And we have a great team this year, and we're going places in playoffs. We got a first round bye and 2 home playoff games. So I just think this is one of the most direct resolutions to this field shortage for student athletes, and I hope we can consider putting a turf field in. So thank you.
They're not my notes. Okay. I'm Sarah Childs-Gagnon. I'm from Brattleboro. And so I think the first thing I want to say is I'm actually totally not prepared with anything tonight. I didn't realize that this was going to be the format. I came because I support the turf field. And I actually, as I sit here tonight watching all of this, my first thought is that this is really not inclusive, this process. How many people are not comfortable coming up here, taking a microphone and speaking to you? I work for a global national corporation, and they recognize that there are lots of people at meetings that do not feel comfortable speaking, so they allow for texting. You can do a chat and send your questions up to the person running the town hall in a meeting. You can also stay in your seat if you're in an auditorium where they're giving a meeting. So I think what I want to say is that I knew people who might have come tonight, but they didn't want to talk. They didn't feel comfortable trying to defend whatever position that they have about this issue. There may be people sitting here tonight that don't feel comfortable coming up here to talk to you about this. I just thought I would say that because I don't think this is inclusive. I can get up here, I'm nervous, I don't do this very often, but if Gus can get up here and talk about how important that turf field is to him, then I can, because I'm a lot older than he is. I did come to the meeting in June. It was my first ever school board meeting that I've ever attended. And I came because I knew that there was going to be a vote about the fields. And I read about it. It wasn't just an inside job like I think some people have insinuated tonight that, you had to know about it because you were an administrator or a teacher or a coach or something. I read about it in the newspaper and I saw it on Facebook. And I came because I believe that a turf field is really important for our student athletes. I believe it's important for our school athletic programs. I believe it's important for new families coming to the area to see what this town has to offer. We have so many problems in town that when they come up to the school, if they see a beautiful new turf field, they see the track, they hear about the sports programs. We've got a nice little campus right here. It's an important selling point. I drove by the new Burger King going up today, and I thought, why aren't people outraged that there's some new Burger King going in? They're paving, they're putting up, new sewers. That's an environmental issue right there. And how many of our kids are going to walk up to that Burger King and go get junk food? All due respect to Burger King. I'm just saying that, there's a lot of environmental issues that we could be, or issues that we could be going after and talking about the environmental problems with. I think our turf field's important, and, I think you should go for it. Thank you.
So point of clarification, the people can can always email the board, and so we've said that at our meetings. By all means, we will take emails, letters, I've gotten letters dropped off in my mailbox, so that is another way to contact the board, and they're forwarded to the entire board.
That's good. And then you should read them here, you know, or have some way to make them public so that they're read so people hear about it, you know. Thank you.
Henry Sweeney, Brian, Tyler, and Jill Stahl.
Thanks, board, for taking the time to have people come speak. I'd like to see, I would take originally 3 minutes. I'd like to see 2 minutes to the head of the Student Environmental Club who'd like to speak and was not able to get here in time to sign up on the list, if that's possible.
The list is going back there.
Oh, more people can speak?
More people can speak.
Okay,
Yes.
so I won't see my time. My name's Henry Zucchini. I'm a teacher at BUHS and a concerned parent and a parent of athletes at the school. A few things have been said. One thing I want to clarify about the legality of it, just to make sure people know, is that the actual article does not state that the service will be resurfaced with the synthetic field. It states it will be resurfaced, so let's be very clear. There's no rule violation here. There's nothing about that that's actually real. It says it'll be resurfaced. It will be resurfaced with pebbles. It can be resurfaced with whatever animal fur, if we wanted to resurface it with anything. So let's just be clear, it can be resurfaced as the board sees fit. It's not a legal issue. My concern mainly as a teacher at the school is I feel right now, and I only know BOHS intimately, I know some of the other schools from the teachers that I talk to and being in the district for a few years, but my concern about the high school is that we right now are an under-resourced building. In other words, the new expectation in the high school, in case you're not aware for teachers, is that we have a full inclusion program, which means that all of our students come into the high school and into the classrooms with very little in-class support as far as parent educators or special educators in the classroom able to push in with teachers. And so we have, I would say, a funding shortage. And the reference from the board, at least the finance chair, Frank Rucker, was that this would be taken from reserve funds. Not capital expense funds, but reserve funds that could be used, I think, since our job is to educate people, to better educate our children in the classrooms. In other words, provide the necessary support that we do not have right now. $1 million is a lot of money. It won't solve everything, but it's a lot of money that can be spent in a better and different way. I don't think any of the people here tonight are saying don't resurface the field and don't play sports. Most of us have involvement in sports in the town. I have 2 girls that play. The issue is how to resurface the field and what it will cost. And it's very, very strongly evident that the amount of money to be spent on resurfacing the field with synthetic turf is much higher cost, and it's much more dangerous. Sure, we don't have scientific studies that say these fields cause cancer, but we know that the fields are made of carcinogenic materials. So that's just a fact of the matter. Whether it causes cancer or not, I'm not sure that should be really a point of concern, other than the fact that we know there are carcinogens in these fields, there's multiple carcinogens in them. So do we really need to have the 40-year study to prove it when we already know there are carcinogens in the field? So I think I'll stop there, but thank you for hearing my testimony.
Brian Tyler, Brattleboro.
You can speak right now.
Brian Tyler, Brattleboro. Just a couple comments on earlier things. I don't remember exactly who said them, but on the vote, if you go back through the years of all the school district votes for the budget, when you read the paper the next morning after it passes, it's not that the budget passed, it's that the budget passed by historically low numbers at the turnout. So to say that it wasn't represented at the vote isn't exactly accurate because people just plain and simple don't show up. Someone mentioned something about only getting out 2 weeks early in the spring. I've had 2 boys that have gone through the lacrosse program and a daughter who's coming up through it now. 2 weeks in the spring is a big deal for lacrosse. When you look at peer-to-peer play, at least half of the teams we play through the course of the season are out 2 weeks earlier than we are because they're on turf. And for those of you who don't get a chance to come out to the lacrosse game, I invite you out on some rainy spring morning at the end of April to watch them run up and down the mud field and pass the ball and miss, and the ball plugs in the ground, and you got two players out there looking at each other, what do we do now? Or digging it out with their sticks and slipping and sliding up the field. So, player safety, I don't know how many players have been injured through just the poor field conditions. It's sloppy wet, or it's rock hard, one or the other. So there are definite benefits for player safety and for peer-to-peer play, getting ready for the season, for a new field.
Hi, I'm Jill Tyler from Brattleboro, curiously related to Brian. So I also had two sons, one daughter, going through the lacrosse program. But the thing that I want to start with is a question to the board. If you don't put in a turf field, I thought the number I heard was $500,000 to do something else with the field, to just resurface it with natural turf. Is that the number? Right? Christina?
Yes.
So $500,000 versus 1.2 million makes a little bit more sense. It's not 10,000 versus 1.2 million. It's $500,000, and how long does that last? And what do we get? If you spend the full 1.2 million, you get more sports on the field for more time with more kids, including physical education classes. And the PE teacher at the last meeting gave the number of how many kids and how many hours. Possibly more playoff games and more safety. So it's not just let's spend so much more money because we think it's better to have a turf field. It actually brings in a lot of other things. I'm curious when Gus points out that it's, where did Gus go? There we are. And Gus, 2002, you said when this process started. How old were you? One, you guys. One, and we're still standing around here talking about this process. It's not something that just suddenly appeared in a June meeting. If you paid attention and you were watching this, this is a process that's been planned for and looked at. I served on the board for 8 years at the Brattleboro Town School Board. Some of you know me well from that process. One of the things that I came away with most impacting was we don't pay money to these folks that sit up here as administrators and that are out there that just goes out the window. We have incredible administrators who spend a heck of a lot of time paying attention to details like this. And to suddenly sit here and jump up and say we're going to throw away everything that's been done and been studied and been looked at, and to discount the time and energy that's gone into and put forth by people that we pay taxpayer money to do their jobs, strikes me as really disingenuous and a waste of taxpayer money. To me, this is why people don't come out and don't participate in this process. Because we go through a legal process and then we just throw it up in the air and we say we don't want to do it anymore. I'm all for public participation. But we also have a process, and the process was followed. I guess I'm going to echo at the end what Kim Price said. When do we do this? How long do we keep going through the same process?
I'm going to see my time.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll see my time.
I think your time's got.
Hello, my name is John Murphy. If you don't know me, I help out with the lacrosse program. 2 years ago, we started a middle school club program for boys, and last year we began a sanctioned program for boys. I will say 60% of our games, which were scheduled on natural field, were canceled. If you want to talk about disappointment, why don't you tell 18 little boys that the game they've been looking forward to for many years is canceled. This is not, as it's been framed, an issue where environmentalists are against athletes. Those words set up a false dichotomy and concern me deeply. This is about equal access and additional hours of play outside for the children in our community. And do we, as a community, have the wherewithal to do this and provide this infrastructure for our children? Currently, Nanowich Field, my understanding, has 200 hours of use annually. The football team gets 6 games. There's 6 or 7 lacrosse games for boys and 6 or 7 for girls. That's it. Right now, there's 175 students participating in sanctioned sports that play on fields that are not regulation. How is that even allowed in a state where the Vermont Principals Association considers athletics co-curriculum? This is about equal access and additional time on the fields. Not only are these student athletes shorted, teams like the soccer field, and tonight the field hockey team played a game on the outfield of the baseball field. Someone said, synthetic turf is not safe. You want to tell me about a field that transitioned from grass to dirt in a field sport? I'm not a sports scientist, but I don't think that's safe, personally. It's not just about the student athletes. Every child in our school system goes to gym. The gym teachers outlined 150 hours daily. With additional days on an AstroTurf field, they estimate 35 additional days, that's 5,250 hours our children in our community can spend outside playing. This is about equal access and increased hours for our community children. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the extra time. I just want to touch up on what John Murphy was talking about. I'm actually a member of the BPA, the newly formed Student Advisory Athletic Committee. And it's part of my job to represent the students at Brattleboro and the students at a state level with the state committee. So I think this turf field, as John was saying, is that it's really for the accessibility of the students at Brattleboro. It's saying we're not going to use the turf, the natural fields that we already have in place, but it's going to allow us to hold our majority of our practice hours on a turf field, which will protect the life of these other fields. And we can use the better ones, right? So Sawyer Field is a great field. It's regulation, it has width, it doesn't have lights because of some highway constraints, but it gets destroyed. It's dirt by the end of the soccer season. It's been touched upon that the lacrosse programs can come out of the gyms 2 weeks earlier because we can plow this field. Again, in the fall, it's not just the football program that can use this stadium setting at the heart of our campus, that Nanowich Field where it's located. We can have the girls' soccer program, the boys' soccer program, JV games, and then football Friday nights. In the spring, we'll have girls lacrosse lines, boys lacrosse lines. We just added ultimate frisbee as a varsity sport, right? So that could, even if ultimate wants to play on a grass field, now lacrosse can give the grass fields ultimate and we can play on a synthetic turf field. That's all I really have to touch upon. The safety of the soccer team that I'm representing here tonight is also at stake, right? We're playing in the outfield of a baseball field, where it's not just the gradient of dirt to grass, right? There's a lump there. If you pass a ball through that, the ball will actually leave the ground because of that lump there. I've seen many guys take spills, take balls right into the dirt. You see the opposing team come off the bus, walk onto this short field that is already barely BPA legal for soccer. Teams that travel 2 hours to come play us, and then they get to this field that is relatively a disappointment and an embarrassment to my boys' soccer team. So that's just, again, something I wanted to fill the board in and some members here tonight. So thank you.
Next up, we have Dan Normando, Evan, and Chris Sawyer.
Thank you. I'm Dan Normando from Dummerston. So much to touch on here tonight. I'm going to start echoing what Dick DeGray said earlier. For me personally, this is not an us versus them, and I really encourage the board to think that way. Next, I want to pick up on what Gus has talked about. This really wasn't in my script tonight, but I was very impressed with you, Gus, here tonight. I don't know you, but for a student at the high school to carry themselves the way you do and to have a good thought process is commendable, and I really respect that. I also want to tell you, I love the hell out of watching you play soccer, and that was a great game last night. Woo! Yeah. So I really did pay attention to a lot of what you said, and I've changed what I was going to say tonight based on that. It's become really clear to me, and I didn't learn this until listening to Gus, that this has been going on for a long time. So that really reinforces what I did want to come here tonight and say, and that the process didn't work. It hasn't worked, and it's not working. If this started in 2002, it was a pretty crappy process to be standing here in 2019 and not have anything done. I played on that soccer field almost 40 years ago. And by the way, the Burger King was there too at that time. And we didn't go, for those of us who played soccer. I would like to see something done. I don't know what it is, but if it was a good process, it would help me make that decision a lot easier than falling into the us versus them thing that is happening no matter how many people say it shouldn't or isn't. So I encourage the board to get away from this classic two-choice option thing that really isn't about two choices. I would encourage you to take a step back, hire a consultant, put the time into what needs to be done, and that is start with all the information that's been collected, recollate it, sift through it, analyze it, work with the consultant, come up with what the best solution is with the fields that we have, the fields that we don't have, the fields that we could have, the types of fields we have or don't have and could have. Make sure you include a schedule from the AD's office as to how teams are going to be able to use this field at the same time. There's only so many hours during the day. Make sure you guys look at everything so that we are not standing here 17 years from now. Help me, I'm 2038, and going over the same thing again. Thank you.
Many things that you said, and now I can see both sides of the issue, but as a soccer player myself, I started playing as 6 years old and I'm almost 60, so playing for quite a while. On grass fields and turf fields, I like them both. I love going on the turf field, nice, smooth, it makes the game much better. The only downside for me now is I get a little sore after a game like that. But what I want to say is that I've been coaching the varsity girls for 12 years at BUHS. And the issue that I had several times during the season is field availability. You come to a practice and you think you have a hard field or the field, and then there's games, or another team has to go to the Fort Dummer field, or they come from the thick field to Fort Dummer field because the fields are dead. So suddenly you have 4 or 5 teams practicing, and you plan a practice, and you cannot do your practice because you have a field made the size of the gym. And that is pretty annoying. Sometimes, though, you bring the group to the Farmolari field, and then you have to walk to the Farmolari field, you lose 20 minutes, or it was maybe 45 minutes, there was also talk going on. And one thing that was, what I remember, was maybe 7, 8 years ago, there's big trucks going by, usually. And there was almost the accident there with a big truck hitting one of the girls. And so you have to walk into the field sometimes. So that if there is a turf field that can be used all the time in the rain, you can plow up the snow. And I also think we owe it to the field hockey team because they're always struggling with I think soccer is difficult to play, field hockey is really difficult to play on a non-turf field. And coming from the Netherlands and going there every year, all the field hockey fields in the whole Netherlands are all artificial turf. It makes a great game. And I love the game of field hockey as well. And I think we owe it almost to them to have a turf field being put in. And again, it opens up the field and then space for many other teams. Thanks.
Sawyer, then Diane Whitney, then Lily Wood.
Yes, thank you. So I was going to talk a lot about different things, but as I sat here tonight, just listening to different things from the crowd, I appreciate all the thought that's gone into a natural grass field. There's a great positive benefits about natural grass fields, but this project was undertaken with the idea that we'd really like to see our field hockey program, our boys and girls soccer programs have access to the same quality environment that our football team and lacrosse teams have. Currently, you've heard here, the fields they play on do not represent them as student athletes. They deserve better. So I heard other people from the audience say a natural field would cost $500,000, and what do you get for that? Well, right now, Mr. Gray was here earlier and he left, but he alluded to the fact that nothing's been done to that field since 1965, and I think that's a positive. I think we should tip our hat to our groundskeeper, who's done a great job maintaining that field. Without spending another dollar, we can continue to do what we do. We've been doing it since 2000 when we've added more and more sports. But again, that does not address the equality of access for our program. I would just urge the board, as other people have said, it's time to really see information. And that's we keep doing this over and over, but I would really urge the board to allow us to proceed with an RFP tonight and maybe get some engineering and some consultants to really take a look at what's going on. So that's the important thing, to let the public know. We really don't have a lot to hide. Just sitting here talking about hours. Right now, Nanoch Field is used in the fall for approximately 3,800 player hours. If we had a synthetic field on Nanoch Field in the fall alone, we could look at 28,915 student hours. That would include phys ed all day. So 28,900 compared to 3,800 is a pretty big deal. And when we start talking about costs, in 20 years from now, the cost benefits for a synthetic turf field are not much different than a natural grass field. And we already know the natural grass field can't maintain football. I went to college at Springfield College, I'm well aware of Forest Park. That's a beautiful, huge acreage area, but they have many fields. They have like 20 fields in that area, so it's kind of not a fair comparison. But one field that is like ours is Treetop Park, Treetop Field. And Treetop Field is used 30 hours a week, so 15 practices a week. We already do much more on our grass field, so that's not the option. We can already do that, but that's not going to help field hockey. That's not going to help boys and girls soccer. That's not going to help phys ed or middle school programming. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Diana Whitney, and thanks to the board for your service for our community. I'm here as a mother of female athletes and an advocate for girls and women in women's sports. And what I want to ask is, do we value our student athletes in our community, and do we want gender equity in sports? Right now, the football team plays under the lights. It's a big cultural community event that happens, and if Nanowich Field were able to be resurfaced, then we would be able to have the community come together and watch our girls' teams, their field hockey team, the soccer team. I have 2 girls who play 7th and 9th grade at BAMS and at BOHS, and my vision is that before they graduate, that they are able to play under the lights with the town coming together to cheer for the girls' varsity soccer team in the way that this town comes together to cheer for the football players. And I admit I don't understand all the different nuances of natural grass or whatever, and I urge you all, as everyone's been saying, to do the research. But from what I can tell, that putting artificial turf in would allow the maximum access. This is a question of access. It's also about phys ed. And all the kids who get to spend more time outside. And if you look at the CDC, they're talking about physical activity and what we need for our kids in this day and age, and a time when they're mostly on screens and anxiety in kids is increasing. More time outside, more time where not just our after-school athletes, but kids during the day can get out seems really important. So if there's another, more environmentally friendly option than the AstroTurf, yeah, go ahead and consider it, but when are we gonna be able to have equal access for our girls' teams to this field? And it's too long, 17 years is too long. I wanna see this happen while my kids and other kids are within the next, hopefully soon. I don't know what your time frame is, but I would really like to see that. And I appreciate a whole dialogue here. I don't see this as us against them. And I really hope that we can also support our athletes to go on and be competitive at the college level. And I believe that this town, I guess I've seen my kids go play at other schools in Vermont and in Massachusetts, and our resources just aren't as good. So it would create more pride in our community in Brattleboro if we improved our playing fields, not just for athletes, but for people who come, and for camps in the summer. So thank you, and I hope that there's a good solution.
Hello, my name's Amelia Glickman. I'm a current member of the girls varsity soccer team as well as a member of the girls varsity lacrosse team. And before I begin, what I would like to say, I just want to say that I have immense respect for Gus Williams, who has put a lot of time and effort in this. And I think that in general, we need more student involvement in issues like this. That being said, I'm going to respectfully disagree with your point of view. So when this initial petition was going around, Gus came up to a number of student athletes and asked, would a turf field be fun? It would look really cool, we could have the Brattleboro logo on it, all this stuff. And I admit I signed the petition because in that moment I thought, wow, I would like to be on this team playing soccer, playing lacrosse, and I think that would be really cool to have this great resource. Since then, I had many realizations, one of which was about the safety of student athletes and also environmental concerns. I'm also here to represent the student environmental group. We met this afternoon to discuss the turf field and everybody was vehemently opposed. We also met with athletic trainer Jacqueline Penson, and I'm grateful she allowed me to reference her when I discuss this right now. Jackie has done a lot of her master's degree on synthetic surfaces and the effects they have on athletes, and there has been increased risk, especially of knee injuries for female athletes and male athletes, as well as ankle injuries, because the human body is not actually used to playing on synthetic surfaces as opposed to grass fields. In addition to that, we're at a time in this world where there's not 1 second that we can use to spare more things that will be costly to our environment. We should be doing everything we can to go against putting more plastic and more synthetic things into an already quickly deteriorating environment. So I encourage you all to think about that as a larger issue. The last thing I would like to say is that as a student athlete and a member of the school community myself, I, as well as many of my soccer teammates, don't like playing on turf field. This is a contested issue. Some people prefer it. It is really bad with turf burn, and I was actually, I had a season a while back where I was at risk of infection because I did play on a turf field with an open injury, and then had to get antibiotics where I otherwise wouldn't. So I just would encourage you to see that perspective as well, that not every student athlete does prefer that surface, and that it is our environment that is in question. Thank you.
Ellen, sorry, I'm gonna mess this up. Corner boy.
So I'm a student at Landmark College, so this is more of a personal experience. I was an athlete at, when I was younger, and I played on turf, and I'm on poses. I'm posing. My college has turf, which is Landmark. My high school has turf, and I've seen throughout my high school and so far college that turf has actually been, the turf fields has, for many athletes, has improved. So, yes, you may get burns and you may have to, like Amelia said, I get it. I've had burns, I've played soccer, I've been goalie. So there's that, but it's more of getting the community involved, putting out that, hey, our fields are open to everyone. I've seen, as of last semester, since we got out of turf, we've had younger students, or soccer students, playing on our field at Landmark. And so it's inclusion, or ability to use a school or turf to be the hub of the community, or at least the sports team. And we've had, especially in my high school, I'm from Massachusetts, by the way, we've had lacrosse, we've had obviously soccer, we've had track, and even physical education. I've actually had physical education on turf, and being outside, not just inside, outside actually does affect, like, getting fresh air and all that, so I'm opposed. But I'm more of on personal experience, so whatever you guys choose is whatever. Make the right decision. I get it's very costly, but like I said, make it for a important and positive outcome. So don't, like I said, choose it wisely. Thank you.
And that is the entire speakers list. Did I miss anybody? So, the board is possible action. I know the board was given a large document at 9 o'clock last night, going over the whole study from the,
I know the board at 9:15 last night received a, how many page document of the history and the facts of this, which I'm not sure the whole board has had a chance to review, and I want to make sure you all got it, actually. And so I'm checking in with the board if you're ready to make a decision tonight, or if you would prefer to wait until the next meeting. Not hearing a motion to take action tonight, I'm assuming that you would like to postpone this decision until the next meeting. Table to.
I'm okay with tonight, if other people want. That's fine.
So hearing no motion, we will not take action on the field tonight. I'm going to suggest that this was our public comment time. And so we will allot 10 minutes before taking a vote at the next meeting about the direction we go. And so we will divide that time very carefully, but we have opened up this whole night, and a large thank you to Julianne also for preparing the show for this. So we will... So this this is her first board meeting as principal, so we really know how to say, welcome to town, welcome to the WSESD principalship at this meeting. Is there a point of clarification or a point of order?
I believe so.
Okay, then I could entertain that because I don't have a choice.
Okay. The clarification is, it would be lovely to have a clear process, because one of the issues that came up is that the Finance Committee brought up an RFP that did not include natural grass, and so I think right now, in the absence of a clearly documented and agreed upon process and a timeline, it leads the public to feel like there isn't transparency and there is some kind of nefarious thing happening. And so I think it would be in our interest to have process and timeline publicized so that people understand how to engage with this.
So
is that clarification?
Yes, that's clarification. Our Communications Council did send out a press release about this. No decisions are made at the committee level. Committees cannot make decisions for the full board. And a $1.25 million decision will not be made at the committee level. It will be made by a full board. So next meeting, I expect that we will take a vote on this once people have had a chance to review all the information that came from the athletic department last night. Does that answer your question?
I hear you saying that an RFP and the criteria of whether or not to include natural grass, synthetic, and organic surface in an RFP, that decision will be made at the next board meeting on a Wednesday in 2 weeks.
Yes.
As a volunteer in the Communications Committee, I would like permission that we review that tomorrow and put that press release out.
So check with your meeting chair.
Okay.
And that is the first order of business. Yes.
I'm a little confused because the next two items, E and F, are requesting an RFP and an RFQ.
That's if we were going to take action tonight. So there was possible, that's a possible action. So that if the board said, I want to vote tonight on this, then we would have gone forward. We'll table it at this point because the board does not want to go forward with that decision. I believe you were the requester.
If I could I query the administration? One thing that I'm a little concerned about is I was the one that put the, can you hear me now? I was the one that put the two agenda items on the Finance Committee subcommittee agenda. And we did not take them up, that was tabled, but we did have discussion in other business. So one thing that I would like to ask, and perhaps the administration knows the answer, is the timeline for the RFQ and the RFP, I don't really understand, and is there a inaction can prevent a decision-making process later? In other words, what actually happens in terms of the timeline? Thank you.
I think I can make a couple of comments, but I know Steve Perrin, high school principal, is much more familiar, and if Chris Sawyer's here, with the details moving forward. I think from the administration's point of view, what would need to be clarified, I appreciate the question that was asked. Based on the last discussion of the Finance Committee meeting, you can see that we had sample RFQ and RFP documents that outlined essentially the discussion that ensued for the June 12th vote and then the subsequent June 25th vote. And that was specific to solving the problems that have been discussed tonight, primarily access to a key facility with the infrastructure around it, the lighting, the concession stand, drainage, and so on. So the issue that that I believe that the administration has, and I'm not as close to the details, though, as we try to answer your question, is if you're asking the administration to bring a grass field RFP to the board at the next meeting, maybe Steve will speak to that, and then we can talk about the timeline implications that you were raising. So, turn over to Steve.
Thank you. As we're looking at this process, we're looking at a timeline at this point where if we were going to do anything that would allow us to use the field beginning next fall, we would have to do construction next June and to have things ready. With the grass field, an RFP for a grass field really puts us into the same situation we're in now. The grass field is a valuable commodity. We have that now. That's not why we're here. We're not here because we want to keep grass, because the grass field does not let us expand our programs. It does not let us have access for our soccer teams during the fall. It doesn't let us use that facility that we've been building since 2008 to get ready for this moment. So if an RFP for grass was requested and we did one, I'm not sure if we want to replace a grass field with a grass field. Because there's two things that you lose. You lose one, maybe 2 seasons of home games while you install the field, let it grow, all of that stuff. So you lose some playing time there, at least a season, maybe 2. You would also, and again, this happened in Rutland, you would run the danger of that field not taking and not being viable. Again, I can't speak to that. But ultimately, an RFP for a grass field would not solve the issue we're trying to solve. And that issue is that we need a way to use the existing field space we have more often and for more of our programs. But right now, our soccer programs and our field hockey programs are grossly neglected because they don't have access to that field. And we would be able to do that. So does that answer the question, Sean, about?
No. The other part of it would be, if the RFP does not go out, let's say for another month or 2 months, is that going to affect the outcome after the, in other words, does that make the decision for us? The fact inaction makes the decision?
I don't think it does. I think if, the longer we delay, it just means that we push back whenever this project would happen. And what we would run into at some point is we run into the idea that we would be up against next winter. And so there's no construction then. And so it would just delay when the project happens. Does that help?
I think I want to end, I'm looking for a motion to end debate on the subject because I think the board is not ready to take action. Or we've taken public testimony. Is there a motion to end debate on this subject? Is there a second on that?
Second.
All those in favor of ending debate on this agenda item, please signify by saying aye. Nays or abstentions? The ayes are here to have it, the ayes have it. We're moving on from this agenda item. Yes.
Can we still email, write letters to the board?
You can email, write letters, send secret coded messages to my mailbox. We take telegrams, faxes, and telex machines, showing my age. However you communicate to the board, and you can either communicate to the entire board, or if you communicate to me, I always make sure it goes to the full board prior to the meeting so that all board members have it. And point taken, it might be nice to put that on the website because we've gotten probably 40 letters from people that are interested in this topic. Yes, Mr. Normandale.
My question is, will the RFP and the RFQ information be made public? Because it sounds to me like the one that was proposed to be brought to the board kind of negates the whole purpose of having tonight's meeting.
So,
of having input from the community. And if what's John said, and
can I clarify that? Because there was something of a misunderstanding. And so the document that came as an RFQ to the Finance Committee was a sample example of what it might look like for training purposes only. So that is not necessarily the RFP that goes forward. And it has been labeled sample for discussion, training purposes only, because we don't go spend over $1 million very often on this board. There's a whole statutory requirement how we do that. So the document that was presented at the Finance Committee is not necessarily RFP going forward.
no, but that's the one that came to the board tonight, is that correct?
No, there was no.
Well,
We
I mean,
would've-
you have an agenda item giving an RFP tonight too.
Well, if we had gone with an RFP, they had it at the ready. If we were ready to go, they had RFPs at the ready.
For turf field.
I actually don't know.
I'm sorry?
I actually don't know. I didn't put that agenda item on the agenda.
You didn't put the agenda item on.
So I don't know what RFPs came prepared. I presume that they had all the RFPs ready that we would have asked for, potentially. Grass, turf, and then artificial turf, with an alternative infill.
Well, that would be the assumption that I would hope that.
That's what I would.
not occur.
We've ended debate on all these topics, though, so thank you.
Point of clarification.
I can't hear you.
If you send out the RFQ, my understanding there is a 60-day period between the RFQ and when an RFP can go out. Is that correct? By the state statute? So by sending out the RFQ, by voting on tonight, sending the RFQ, all you're doing is looking for qualified contractors who choose to send out the RFP into the field. So there's no harm, no foul in sending out an RFQ tomorrow morning. So if it's on your agenda, I'm asking you to vote for pass the RFQ and wait on your decision for the RFP to get all the information you're looking for that.
We've moved on from this agenda item. It's been tabled by more than a 2/3 vote. So I'm not going to open it again unless the board wants to move on. Ending debate is not debating. Ending discussion is not debatable as a motion. Moving on to other business, we have an executive session under 1 VSA 313. We have two. To discuss student records not open to not subject to public review, and also under 1 VSA 313 to discuss a personnel matter. We are going to adjourn to another room. You're welcome to stay, and we'll be back after the adjournment. I'm inviting the superintendent and Kelly Dias and Mary Kaufman in Windham. Executive session at 8:20. Moving on to new business. Your microphone. Sorry? Where's your microphone? Oh, move on, move up. There's plenty of space. I don't have a dang microphone. Move it on up. Here we are. Oh, that's okay. Don't bug BCTV though, if you want to move up.
Oops. She said to move up.
Are we all moving up?
That way I don't have to, that way we can.
Let's move up. We don't have a camera, guys, like it's not. And you're like, I hate this stuff.
What a great idea.
I'm not gonna talk.
So I passed out to the
board. Exhibit A, Exhibit B. I have a few extra copies. Anybody wants to copy the ballot? I will send it digitally to you, yes. Well, I have the wording, but Barb was messing with the format until right now, so how it was going to be.
Do you want me?
So, let's fill the ledger. So, the committee met, the AP committee, sounds so like we're good students. The article and policy committee, the AP committee, met on Tuesday morning, read through the warning. I, over the weekend, Friday, Monday, was back and forth with the attorney who made some good suggestions, such as changing on the warning and on the ballot things that are articles. When you're talking about changing the articles, it was very circular reasoning when you read through it. A little bit of a reference at the beginning about why things are stricken and underlined, because explaining how the legislative format is because these will be changes on the articles. And a few other simple changes that the committee had requested. There was, and adding the leadership councils in as its own article because it didn't seem to really go with any existing article. So that's pretty much the changes that we made. Yes, John?
I was looking through this and I did have a question. It's the, in question 1, so if you look at question 1 and then you go down to the 4th paragraph, it says that the board members shall be elected at the annual special meeting of the new union district. I don't see how that could be done if it has to be voted on at every town.
Where are you? Can you say what paragraph? I didn't quite hear what paragraph.
It's the 4th paragraph.
4th paragraph, question 1.
So shall be elected at an annual special meeting of the new union district. It's, we've already gone over that the representatives and all questions would be a ballot within the town from 10 in the morning till 7 in the evening.
And along those same lines, the official ballot says Southfield School District special meeting. So does that mean that the election is considered a special meeting? Because right under the rest of 1 lays out the process of doing the voting in the towns.
Right.
So it must have some different meaning than what we think of as a special meeting.
Special meeting.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to have an election for board members at a meeting of the new union school district.
If that's what it means.
Yeah, if that's what it means, it doesn't make sense, because you'd have to go to the town office, wherever you're doing your balloting, and
right.
put it over some guilt in Brattleboro, and cast your ballot. So.
It's highly inconvenient.
It is. I wish I had noticed it day before yesterday.
Setting reviews as well.
Could we approve these based on the understanding that that doesn't mean that the board members are elected at a meeting, but they are elected, as it says in the 6th paragraph of the question?
Or that's supposed to be crossed out. Is that like the crossed out verbiage that then is replaced by?
The underline is new.
Right, but on all the other ones, there's something that's crossed out that's being replaced. So is this just missing the crossed out? Sorry.
That's true. The actual articles too. Look at the articles. This is supposed to be the easy part of the meeting.
There's also, the only reason why I'm guessing that is because the paragraph before that states that the board will have 3 years, and below you're defining those differently, so I assume it's supposed to be crossed out.
To get it into the sequence.
On or after in the articles, so I think we don't think an annual meeting or a special meeting is what we think it is, maybe?
That must be.
Because that was in the original articles. And that's how we did the voting originally, was at the district offices, it wasn't an annual meeting then. So, well, are there any other major questions before we just flush the toilet on this from the board first? Okay, Tara.
Sarah Casson, Putney. I have a question. I was reading here that you are voting to have 8 members go to 10. 4 of those shall be seated from Brattleboro, 2 from the other towns. I remember you guys talking and taking a vote amongst yourself on what to present to the lawyer, but I do not remember where that was voted on by the board here to present only that option.
We can only present one option on a ballot. I don't remember when we had that discussion. Does anybody else remember?
No, but if I look hard, you probably find chapter numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely do.
We definitely spoke about it too.
I remember that too. But you would gone back and forth with the lawyers and.
Okay. And that brings me to my next question. I'm sorry. To have not found it myself prior. One of the things on the closure of schools indicates that you don't have has to be 50% or something, or hit 3 of these criterias, but one of the criterias is be supported by the Unified District Board majority. And would the change in the structure of the board affect the majority votes for school closures at schools such as Putney?
Depends on whether people voted the majority. I mean, it depends on how each person voted.
But you have to meet all those tests, so that if we're gonna close Dummerston School.
So unless all of the following occur, thank you, sorry, I did this.
It's not a dim sum.
It's not a pick one, it has to fit this criteria, it has to fit all of these criteria.
Exactly.
But is that expressly said?
Yep.
Yes, sorry, I
Unless
misread.
all of the following occur.
All of the following occur. Thank you.
So the preamble under B states unless all of the following occur, and then there are 3 semicolon with 3 bullet points. So I think that's pretty clear that all 3 would
Okay, I did miss it, thank you.
No worries. It's a big ballot. We'll get to answer these questions again. It's good we get some practice at answering them.
So,
Yes, Jody.
at one time, we were discussing that 3 of these would be voted one way and 1 of them had to be voted another way. Has that changed? Because 1 of them had to be voted by
So
all.
so yes, this has been a long discussion with the attorneys, with the town clerks, with the board. I become a ninja on balloting and how long you really want to run an election, and the AOE's position, but actually Will Senning's position, who directs elections. And so while the AOE has a recommendation, the law is not clear, and the Senning, who is the director of elections, is really concerned about balloting, about votes that start at 10 o'clock in the morning, are open till 7, and then you have a local count, and then you have to drive to Brattleboro and do another count, and how you'll get a Board of Civil Authority at 10 o'clock at night after having polls, and their day doesn't start at 10 o'clock when the polls open at 10 o'clock. So there was a high level of concern from the town clerks and from Senning that we would not be running a good election, and I think we had to err on the side of running a good election, which is what our town districts do. And so out of respect to them, so they will keep doing it, and we get a vote that we are confident in. We have written into the articles that the elections will happen. Local count transmitted to the Unified Union District Clerk, which at this point is Barbara Murkowski, and tallied and reported at that office, so that there isn't a 16 to 18 hour process.
And that's the same process that was used when this board was elected.
Right.
Exactly the same process.
Originally, the town, we would know how the town voted on three
And
of
you
these,
still
but
will.
not
You
one.
still will, because that's public information.
Oh, because I was talking to Lori, and I thought she was concerned.
No, I think it's been clear that that's public information. Once, if information's being tallied at a local level.
That's why we did it this way and took all the time and all the hassle with talking to those people, making sure that we got what we wanted, which is the towns to vote for their representatives and to know who won, and we got votes.
I just stole an extra copy of hers. Can I
Shot
keep
it
it or
down.
not?
You can have these, leave them up with you.
Because I can scan it and send it to other people who want it, so.
Yes,
I have another question. Sorry. Also, with the structuring is the same from question 2 to question 3, but question 2 does not specify, as it does in question 1, that all of the following must occur. Is that verbiage that is not meant to be here, or is there a different thought process for grade configurations?
It says that the proposals must, which means that all those things have to happen.
Okay. It just doesn't have the same.
It might, if you guys do have to make an edit, I would encourage you to include the language from 3 in 2, because must is not as clear as unless all of the following occur. And if there's going to be disputes like we experienced tonight on legality, it would be nice to say what must be.
So what does the board think about changing that wording, since we're gonna have to change something before?
I guess my question is, do you really think it's not clear?
Yes.
Okay.
I looked for it, I couldn't see it, I found it in 3, I didn't find it in 2. I think must is confusing.
It also opens it up for interpretation of hitting one of these versus hitting all of these options. And that's probably.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
You know, we just added "and" to all of the bullet points, and they make it a little clearer that that's all of them. All of those must.
If we just added and at the end of all the bullet points and.
It would must and.
Yeah.
And semicolon, and thank you. I'm gonna like you, Emily. Jeez, that might run for another term. This seems like a minor change that will not require going back through attorneys and everything. So I think that that's a minor change that I could make, and it can still be warned carefully tomorrow. Excellent. I like to save $250. And then, yes. So so I guess the motion will be that we make that change, either the and semicolon, or I'm gonna leave this up to Barb Nowakowski, who might have a feeling about it, who I trust, who specializes in this. So if it's okay with the board, my motion is to alter question 2 to indicate under C that all of the following must occur, and it will be done however Barb Nowakowski sees fit. She knows her semicolons as well. And then I clarified the language, and maybe I would like to have another board member or 2 with me when we go do that. So if there's any interpretation, like the board has said, okay, these small changes can be made by 2 or 3 people, and we go to central office tomorrow, so this gets warned, it gets on the books 11/19, and, vote 11/19, and if there's a small change that needs to be made on that special meeting language.
Trust you.
I mean, I think, since it's what the article said, since Senning looked at it, and since Ottinger looked at it, I think it's probably okay. But if there's a tweak that needs to be made or for clarity.
I'm looking at the default articles of agreement, and it says preparation of the ballot. The district clerk shall compile the names of the qualified candidates from each town and shall prepare the ballot for use at each polling place in the new district. So that's pretty clear. And this one saying that the directors will be elected at a special meeting of the new, it's counter, they don't match. They don't.
No, but it does under Article 11, which is what we're amending. Because you might be looking at the original one. The third paragraph under Article 11 of the default articles. Each member of the new union board who serves after the expiration date of terms of the initial board member should be elected at an annual or special meeting of the new union district.
Oh.
So that language is still in there. So you might have been looking at the initial election. This is the subsequent election language. And I don't think the intent there is like, you know.
I mean, you can't have polling in the meeting.
Right. So it must mean something else because this is what the agency of education knows that. So there must be a broader definition of annual or special meeting than what we're thinking because this came down from the agency of what
Who would know the answer?
So when I read this though, shall be elected at an annual or special meeting. An annual meeting is town meeting, and that's when we wanted to
do this.
have the new.
Yeah.
The names
Well,
of
then it
the
says
Because you have
of
the
the new
polling
union
at the
district.
yeah.
Of the new union district.
Well, that's us. We're the new union district.
So the polling places for the annual meeting are more varied. Like Brattleboro has multiple polling places, doesn't it? Or doesn't it sometimes?
Well, it depends on the election, but generally it's just one.
So that would be an annual
For
special
town
meeting, but you'd have multiple polling places, right?
No,
When you did that.
if we have an article or anything, any election, there's one place. Okay.
But in the past, it used to be.
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm saying that was still. So is there a group that could be at central office at 9 o'clock tomorrow? Assuming we leave here by 9 o'clock tomorrow? And, and get home, yeah. And then we could, just make sure that that's kosher so we can go ahead and warn it. Because I don't think
Just
these aren't substantive changes, and I feel better seeing that language in the articles. That's what was intended.
That's to be 8, no, it's 2.
Tomorrow's Thursday.
17.
So 8:30? We're just clarifying this and moving, like Barb's fixing the language, we're improving tweaking the language, and we're just getting clarification on this annual or special meeting, and I'll try to reach out to Ottinger or Senate or somebody tonight, or read up. So is there anybody else who would like to join me at 8:30 tomorrow morning? You know, just one other person, I think.
3 would be nice if
Okay, great.
possible.
Okay.
Great.
So the motion I'm looking for is that the board authorizes David, Christina, and Emily to make the changes noted with Barb Nowakowski tomorrow morning at central office and warn the ballot, warn the articles.
So moved.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Emily. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Nays, abstentions, the ayes appear to have it, the ayes do have it. Thank you, this is a major accomplishment to put something in front of the voters. Don't let that turf thing get you down because this is some serious work, thanks to all that came before us. To set it up, it is what it is. Let's hope it goes well. We'll figure out the whole, I don't want to sign it until.
Because it's going to need to be posted.
Right, tomorrow morning I already signed it. Oh, we all need to sign it. So I'm going to sign it and I will not submit it.
Is that just the morning?
It's the morning, but how do we make the changes on what's signed?
there are people are just back to doing something.
Can you write on it what your changes are for your approval?
Make it all initial.
No, because it has to go, be submitted like this with all our signatures on it. So then we'd have my chicken scratch on there saying, and semicolon, and semicolon. What time do we have to have it tomorrow, Victoria? She's gonna love me.
I don't think so.
Could you authorize?
This was Jody's idea.
Christina, could you authorize her to sign? So were there any changes on the last page? There weren't.
There were,
So
there
if
were
we-
no changes on the last
If they were
page.
written and we each initialed next to the change and then we signed the last page, then the changes could be made in computer sort of format and attached to the last page.
Loving that, if that's the will of the board,
Bless you.
is that the will of the board?
Yep.
Yeah. So this will not be submitted, we will sign the warning. We will make changes to the first page. I will not submit it if there's any question. All right.
Can we have a little more discussion on something else?
Sorry?
Can we have a little more discussion on something else?
Yeah, something else on this?
No, on the agenda.
Sure.
I actually have one last point with this agenda item.
Let the board talk.
So are you on this agenda item, Sean?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was confused by the agenda as it was laid out. Unfinished business, D, turf field, discussion, possible action. Then E, there's no indication that says if there's no action taken on item D, that there would then be no action taken, and E and F would not even see the light of day. So I found that extremely confusing, because I assumed we were going to go from D, public comment, and then we would talk about E, and then we would talk about F. And then, possible action is still there. But that's what I assumed would happen. So in light of that, what I will do is put RFQ and RFP on the next finance meeting agenda, which will happen at 5 o'clock on November 6th. And there'll have to be clarification, because there is no understanding by the administration in the central office as to how an RFP would be pursued if it followed a sod option. None at all. So that's, it's totally unclear.
I guess what I'm thinking is people weren't ready to take a vote to do an RFQ on
Well, no.
artificial
no.
turf. So then how would we have voted to advertise and approve the document when we hadn't voted on the turf?
Well, because my assumption, and I think I'm probably wrong for some reason, I didn't realize that the turf field discussion goes away after deed is completed.
Well, it would, to my thinking, if we were going to move forward, if the board was ready to vote and say, we want to have from rubber, we want to have artificial turf with gummy bears put in it, then we would move forward with RFPs and RFQs for artificial turf with gummy bears, because I don't want to, influence the board. We're not getting gummy bears. So I don't understand. I don't know how we could have done those things. Those things are on there in case we were willing to go forward, but since we didn't have a direction to go, having them do an RFP when we're not going in that direction didn't make sense to me. I mean, we're going to expend money advertising for something that the board
It'll
has
be on the
to do.
finance committee agenda.
I don't think we haven't approved I mean, you can't put out an RFP if the board hasn't approved it's going to be on.
And we're not putting it out, we're just discussing it at the finance subcommittee level. So that we can then make a recommendation to the full WSESD board on how we proceed.
So I think let's just I think the concern is that we warn it as RFP discussion training so that we're continuing that discussion as opposed to approval of advertising.
Well, you approve it at the subcommittee level, means that you're going to make a recommendation from the subcommittee of the whole
You can say
board.
approval of recommendation to the full committee. I just think a lot of people are not, a lot of boards did not have finance committees. A lot of people are not aware that, we know that committees can't make decisions, but the public doesn't. So I'm just asking in this transitional time that we would say approval of recommendation so that it's clear, because I think people are not always, I think we just have to
I
be
will do
thoughtful
that.
to keep it a little more
I will
clear.
do that.
Yes.
So,
Director, it's me, and then
so I guess the question is so if the finance committee was looking at RFPs, or RFQs, I guess, at this point, would we be essentially making ones for different brackets of work? So let's say they approved the gummy bears, we would be making one, if the gummy bears and the Starburst and whatever were on the table, we would be doing one for all three? Is that what
Well, Christine, I don't think I don't know, I won't say.
I'm just wondering how, I guess my question is, I'm wondering how we would have RFQs ready to go for options that might not, that might come up. Is that something that would happen? So like, we wouldn't have RFQs for all these options, so is that what Sean's hoping to improve it?
It's challenging that the finance committee is meeting before the board makes a decision, but because
we haven't decided what we want to have an RFP for. I mean, we just heard all this public testimony, and I've got a whole bunch of information I didn't have before that I want to process through and think about. And then I want to be able to talk with the board about what criteria are we going to use to make a decision about whether to proceed. Is it going to be what's the best way to expand the fields? Is it going to include health? Is it going to include environment? What criteria are we going to use to make this decision? And then talk about it, examine that criteria, and make the decision about what we want to ask for proposals now. And before we do that, I don't see how the finance committee has any reason to try and make a proposal if we haven't even decided what we want to ask for proposals, RFP, request proposals for. And we haven't finished the process, and we need to finish the process to figure out what we want to, how we want to go forward. Then it's time for the RFPs. And if that could take months. I have no idea how long it's going to take.
Decades.
so.
I would like to say one more thing.
Yes, of course not.
I was on the BUHS board for a long time. We gave permission in a motion for Chris Sawyer and Steve Perrin and Robert Clerk to look into the possibility of whatever changes were going to be made on that. It did not include SOP because we already have SOP and it doesn't answer the question. The question is field access. So we gave them permission to research and do it. So they've done it, and it also included Frank because he knows the law.
That was the last November meeting, 11/5. Is that the meeting that they came and requested?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think
it's about the time.
Yeah, I think it was.
Okay. I watched that meeting, so just
Yeah. So anyway, they've done a lot of work, and to say we're just going to, develop it now, then it's not fair to them. They've already developed something under the auspice of the BUHS board. They've developed something, and it doesn't include, everything. It includes what they were directed to do in November of 2018. So it's complicated.
It isn't, it's not. I mean,
Liz,
It's actually not being very fair to employees of the district,
So,
principals, management people, and because they've already done all this work.
so
So
I appreciate the hard work they've done, I think we all do, but I think we are answerable to making sure that we can afford this in the changing climate right now.
And what we have to do as a board is give the administration a new direction to satisfy what this board believes should be done. And they do not have that at all. Nothing.
And we haven't decided
They
that.
Yes.
don't talk.
I'm going to recognize Tim.
It seems to me that seeing we haven't really made a decision, to me to move forward with an RFQ and an RFP at this point is essentially continuing to waste their time. Because if it turns out that we're opposed to a turf field or opposed to a grass field, then why ask them to come up with RFPs or RFQs for either of those until we know what we want? It seems like if we've been not making good use of their time up until now, why shouldn't we wait a little bit, see where we're going, and then come back to them when we have a really set idea of what it is we want?
Thomas is actually asking to recognize, I believe, David. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, so something I don't see is, I was trying to bring it up, the minutes from one of our August meetings. We voted on a motion to ask them to bring us proposals for all synthetic with the cork or whatever, and then grass. I don't know what I missed.
So the administration came back and said it would be a lot of work to do an RFP for all three. And they gave us that one-page document that were estimates, and asked us that night to make a decision on it, which was not warrant. And frankly, a one-page was not really the depth of, I think, what the board probably needed, and there was a lot of public discussion. So that led to we're going to try to determine what direction we're going, if we're going to do, instead of getting 3 RFPs and having them go through that work out of respect to them about the level of work it is to do the RFPs and RFQs, that we would make a decision based on an estimate. And then that's why last night we got the packet that helped the BUHS board make that decision with all other kinds of documents we don't have. And then Tim and I both requested the studies that were done, the feasibility studies that were done of this, so we could just have all the data that the BUHS facilities, because the one page didn't, give us a whole lot of data, I would say, and understanding what the need was. So that's why we've moved from the original motion, which was withdrawn and tabled, to looking at, well, it was tabled because they said they were going to get RFPs for everything, and then they came back with estimates. But we've kind of just gone with that estimate and public input and trying to do our own research on this. Any other board members? Sean?
Yeah, I agree with what Tim said. And I think that go a little further. I think that it would only be fair to Steve Perrin, Robert Clark, and Chris Sawyer, and Ken Gingerly, Frank, to make sure that they understand from this board what our direction is, which could be totally different than what they assumed that they were working on. And so we have to tell them where the field is going to be, what the field is going to be made of, and when it's going to be done. Otherwise, they're wasting time. They're wasting time big time, which they already have.
So am I to understand that you're saying that you do not want to put the RFPs and the RFQs on the Finance Committee agenda?
I would like to, because I think if you go to buy a new car, you get all the information, then you get the price, and then you get all the features, and then you decide whether you want to buy it or not. We have nothing. We have no features, we have no model, we have no manufacturer that we picked out, we have nothing. So, and yet we've already asked all the administration to do this, and they've already done it, and they're going forward, so they
they're already in motion on a direction that was given to them by the BOHS board. And now they're totally cut off. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating for them.
So I think we can move on to the what are we doing here, because we have not made a decision about the direction we're going. The board has not voted on this, and the board voted to cease debate and do it next time, and you wanted to make that decision next time about the direction we're gonna go. Voting for natural grass, gummy bears, starburst, artificial, whatever. So that decision has not, and cannot now be made by this board.
No.
That would be very bad for it.
No.
So we
Yeah.
can't make it
But
tonight.
all I'm saying is, we need to make it clear what this board wants. And what this board, in a vote.
Yes.
And then that would change everything. Then the administration and all the people that work at Brattleboro Union High School will know, okay, this is wasted paper here, get rid of that.
Or
we'll do
not,
something different.
or not. Nobody's voted yet.
And if,
So I'm just trying to get to if we vote the next meeting, then we need to do the RFPs, RFQs at the next meeting.
if it passes.
Yeah.
If we vote.
It depends on what we decide.
Yeah, depending on the decision.
Yeah.
Well, we could go, who knows? Who knows what will come up between now and then? But if we vote in the affirmative, then we do the RFPs, RFQs. If we want to have them ready in anticipation, I guess we can do that, but it's gonna be
Well,
problematic.
wouldn't it be education to have what because they've already developed an RFP. and
We already
RFQ.
have a sample, yeah, we
Yeah,
already went over
they've
that.
developed it. Wouldn't it be educational to have that presented at the finance subcommittee level? And then the finance subcommittee look at it, and then we can make a recommendation to the full board.
So I'm gonna suggest, because we already had that educational process at the last finance committee meeting and spent that 40 minutes going
We
over
made
the.
no recommendation. There was no motion.
I know, I'm gonna suggest that if we're gonna move forward, or not, we would make, the full board would make the motion anyway.
Absolutely.
So-
But the finance committee gets to make the motion and pass it for a recommendation or not a recommendation.
I feel sick to my stomach that the public will not understand what you're going after, and it appears to be not transparent. And I know you're a transparent and accountable public servant, so I don't feel comfortable warning approval of an RFP, RFQ before the board has made a decision, because I think we'll be back in the same situation we were at the last time. Okay, drive safely. Yes, Jerry.
Well, after listening tonight and the people who were speaking, and I know you've gotten a lot of letters and stuff, I think there's so much more to consider to even think about making a decision next month. Because there are so many other, I've got a whole bunch of things, I could only talk for 2 or 3 minutes. I've got a whole bunch of things to write to you too, and I know there's a lot of other people that are going to be writing. And number 1. Number 2, this isn't the high school board. I didn't like the high school board's finance committee anyway, and the way they operated. It was not transparent. No,
Jody,
I'm not going to
Jody.
shut down.
Just, let's try and speak positively about public service.
But I think it needs to be more transparent. And I think for you to fall into that same non-transparent thing and letting other people than the whole board, you're only 8 people. And I think we all need to hear the same thing. I think we all need to look at the same thing and not have somebody bring you an idea, and that's it. So it's frustrating from a public point of view.
I believe I told the public that we would not be voting on an RFP and RFQ on the committee level, and those decisions we made at the committee level until the board did that. So I believe that's kind of what I just told Sean, maybe not so clearly, but.
I think it was.
You know, I'm happy to take input from the rest of the board on that, but I interpreted Tim's contribution that he would prefer to make a decision before we have a finance committee meet on an RFP, RFQ. Is there?
I have a question. What exactly would the finance committee determine about the RFP? What is the best financial decision, because we're still talking about what's the best overall decision, not what's the best financial decision.
So it would just be how the RFP and RFQ are written and work. It's not,
Not the substance. Just
well, it would include the substance of, artificial turf, so we have the big substance. But if you're just requesting proposals, you're not deciding to spend money.
The finance committee is responsible for buildings and grounds, so it's not even about the finance part of the finance committee. That's why it's in their building. The finance committee, it's finance and buildings and grounds, and this is a grounds issue, so they would have a role in the process.
Because it's an extensive process for an over $500,000 bid. So just Frank went through with the finance committee last time, these are all the steps involved and this is what it looks like, and so that, if you're going forward with artificial turf, this is what you need to advertise, this is the timeline.
So I guess on next, I just want to be really clear what we're discussing on next week's agenda for 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now. Just because then we're going to go to the communications committee and we're going to be like, what are we even talking about? We need to know. So can we be really clear about, so we're discussing like turf field option to go with, that you had mentioned field, like exploring other fields. So like, how broad is the conversation going to go? Not that we know, but we just want to
clarify
Yes, sir.
The one criteria for this decision is what will give us more field availability. Another criteria is the environmental impact. Another is the health impact on students from playing on that turf. Another is the cost, clearly. And so we need to evaluate at least those four criteria. I don't know what other ones there might be. And I don't know how, again, I think it's a really good question. Is what are we going to, how are we going to decide this? How are we going to do it? Because we just sit down and talk about the criteria and some information. We're not, we're trying to figure it out without saying what matters. Maybe it'll make it more complex than it needs to
So
be.
I guess if we did highlight those criteria, I don't know how the board feels about them, but I guess the thing is I fear us coming to the meeting and then being like, we need to find out all these things, which is fine. We can say we're going to postpone it again. But for example, what gives us more field availability, I have no clue. I don't even know, there's a controversy about like what number of hours we're playing where. I think there's a lot of stuff about girls not being playing, so I know it's because the football team is playing on that field. So I guess, are we planning to get some of this information before the next meeting? And if so, is there subcommittees that can handle those different things, like cost versus, field availability is, they mentioned some equity issues. That strikes me as an equity thing. Environmental impact is like the sustainability committee could do a little bit of reconnaissance on like where do we think we're at. And each of those committees could do a little report out, not that we're going to agree with them, but I guess like it gives us somewhere to go with these conversations, because otherwise we're just going to be debriefing and it's getting up to times. So
We need to start the process. We just got to figure out what more we need to know before we approach it. I think that makes sense, and we've certainly heard that from a lot of people, is people that do homework. And that's part of why I wanted to wait and think about all this, but we do really need to know before we sit down and start talking about how we're going to discuss it.
So the different issues people are discussing are cost, health, environmental impact,
Equity.
access, I guess. Access slash equity, because
it's equity to other districts too.
So those are the four major.
With hours of play.
That's access.
Manage.
So just to make, does the board have any other things they want to add to that? Those are the big four. Okay, Liz.
So it was to borrow money, right?
Yes, that was.
Okay, it's not in reserve fund money.
There's a capital reserve and it's on the capital plan, but there's not a reserve fund called the Natowich Field Artificial Turf Reserve Fund.
So-
I'm aware of. If there is, there's $1.25 million. We can end this now.
Okay, so you want to consider, the, impact on the pupil cost?
That's cost. Cost is all that matters to board members, per pupil cost in the end.
We're bumping up against the cap, and we know that budgets next year are probably going to go up because of.
So that's why cost is like,
That's cost.
Okay,
it's me, cost is on the top.
okay. I just wanted to, like,
I'm that girl, I'm that girl.
okay.
I was wondering if we talked about the cost and we talked about the access. Maybe it would be helpful to have a metric like cost per hours played, which includes both the cost to build it and the maintenance.
I think that all figures into it because the maintenance costs,
Yeah,
we have a little hard
Jamie-
time driving to get from.
Yeah, we were talking about how that would make it very clear, like it would kind of capture the access and the cost of what, to make it easier to compare the two. But we can also do the math and we'll see them.
So I just want to bring it back to the, Tara, if it's quick, I just want to bring it
I
back
just
to the
wanted to
board
make sure you had
statement.
maintenance and management.
No, that's, yeah, we would look at the long-term costs, right, what does it cost to get rid of it? I mean, that, I would expect that if you're on the group looking at cost, you'd be diving into that and getting some, I mean, I've been looking at that, so, yeah. And I've been asking for maintenance costs from the, I really want to have a board conversation, so Jody, is it very quick?
Another option would be to look long-term now at some other options of moving fields around and doing some of those things.
To me, that's what access is. What other,
Because
how
that's
else can
where
we,
there are a lot, I've been doing the Google
how
thing.
else can
and
we
there's
expand access?
a lot of interesting things.
Or are there things?
So would sustainability be up for taking environmental impact and doing that within your committee? Oh, sorry, I always think you are.
We sent in the agenda for next week's meeting today, but
You can
change it, yeah.
add that to the agenda.
I think it's really relevant, it's pressing, so
If we
we'll
let
add
Barb-
that to next one.
And Barb can, there's still plenty of time to change it.
Is there an equity committee meeting? What about programmatic equity?
We're also doing field availability, gender
Gender
equity.
equity in that?
Field availability, gender equity, access to fields, and it's
Options, other options.
other long-term options, so we might need to
But
get.
also other field options. There are other things that could be done with the current, with the fields that we have now, and make them more affordable.
That leaves cost and health. Anybody wanna work on either of those?
What were they?
Cost and health. Yeah, it would be finance. Can't wait for that. Okay. I'll give cost to finance. I'll mention that to Sean. That will be fun. And health. Doesn't really fall in anybody's committee that I can think
We
of.
just got a new document tonight about that too.
Yeah, there's a Mount Sinai Medical School recommendation. So that would be a nice document to consult because that's an expert. It's nice to get expert advice about health from experts. Excuse me? I can see about putting that.
Well,
The problem is if we start
we
putting.
still need somebody to present some sort of findings or if not that, figure out what we need to find out or how we can find it.
Okay, I used to, my first job was with Harvard Medical School Research Lab, so I'm happy to work on health, but I'd love to have some help on that. Anybody?
I'm happy to keep volunteering, but if other people with kids.
I know.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to work here, that's fine.
All right, you can put me in, what exactly do we need to come up
We
with?
can actually do it,
We have a
over
lot.
the phone, so we can just look at kind
Review
of,
some documents.
review some documents and
That's
sort of
fine.
update the board on credible research, and the status of that research, not, I don't like the one-off qualitative studies, I'm looking for the long, ones that are peer-reviewed, medical research, that, been
Is that
published.
the one you were talking about? The one that was,
I think so.
compile
From a
both.
government website, so I'm sure that they were all peer reviewed and credible studies. It's massive. I can send you
Yeah, why don't you send me the link, that'd be great.
the
That'd
link.
be something.
I might be able to help in the health thing because I might have access to PubMed.
Oh.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so are we thinking that we'll just present out, or are we sending like a little blurb to the board beforehand and then we'll talk about it, or what are we doing? Just so we're all.
I think it would be great to have a little blurb beforehand with your, like, as part of your minutes. Or, yeah, so it goes up on the website there, so that people, coming to a meeting and getting presented information, my least favorite thing, and having to assimilate it and go, what? So it'd be great if we could all get something on the website in the next, at least 2 days ahead of time. So
Yeah,
for the
well,
next meeting.
committees meet, two of them, Wednesday.
Friday the 25th.
Well, that would be like 3 days, because then people would have time to review it.
And that gives us a good amount of time to get it done. Yes, Jamie?
Is it appropriate to say in the press release that will go out that the October 30th board meeting?
There is no
There is no
October.
Oh, whatever the date
November
is.
6th. There's five Wednesdays.
We get 3 weeks off.
We've got
I
next
actually have
week.
a week without a meeting.
Okay, good. I'm glad you reminded us. So November 6th, so the November 6th board
So
meeting,
November 1st. So
whatever
11
the date is of the next board meeting, we're going to need location to include in the press release.
UHS Cusick Room, right? Cusick Room.
Okay. Physic room, EUJ, yes.
UHS.
That at that meeting, the subcommittees on the 3 or 4 subcommittees will present information on a set of criteria determined by the board and make a decision about what RFPs and RFQs, about the decision that they want to recommend.
I don't know what the motion will be that we have, so it's a little, the motion could be to send it back to Steinbeck.
The board will discuss the research from the subcommittee level, or the committee level, and make some decisions on what next steps to take.
And vote on, I think it's reasonable to say that we'll have a turf vote one way or the other, so.
Okay.
I see head nodding, or are they just nodding off?
Try, putting something try. Next agenda?
Don't we know? This is never going away.
No, I mean, other items. for
Other
the
items
next
for the
agenda.
next agenda.
We didn't, I have a list of the ones that we postponed already.
That'd be great. You want to yell them out?
The committee, what do we call it? Mission
Thank
goals. Discussion of warrant approval process and how questions will be addressed in the consent agenda format. We had an update from Ann. We put the VSBA dues off one more.
Just keep putting them on.
New warrant process. I think that's it. We did the pre-K partnership, we did the update from Ann, we did the VSBA resolutions, garage pretty well. The other thing I'd like us to talk about is whether, because we're the board, and it's very different now, do we want to do the budget development in a small committee in the mornings, which makes it difficult for all of us to be there, or would it make more sense to do the budget committee or the budget development work all together with the whole board? Because even if it's done at 5 o'clock at the finance committee, there are 4 people on the committee, I'm going to come to all of them. I think there are people that can't come to a 5 o'clock meeting, and you're not going to have the information for us to sale in developing the budget. At least for the first budget, we should all be involved in it
It's an
and take it up
interesting
at regular meetings. So I'd like to put that conversation on the agenda.
Okay. There is no past practice for this board. for
Right,
budget development.
exactly.
So, that sounds good. I know we have some policies. We should do committee reports. I'm sure there'll be some crises in the executive session. Stay tuned and first to get that done with hopefully quickly?
I was just wondering if I could ask one question.
Sure.
I read in the minutes from the first year of the committee that the decision was made to hang the Philadelphia Pride flag in each school. And I was wondering if you considered using this flag instead, which was actually a redesign that was done also fairly recently, which incorporates both the black and brown stripes, but also includes the baby blue and baby pink, which are the transgender colored stripes. I would highly, I don't know how you made the decision or if you looked into this, but I would really suggest you, if you're going to go beyond the basic rainbow stripes, I would encourage you to consider adding the transgender colors as well.
So I do believe, thank you for reminding me that we will, I'm so tired I can't even think of my Robert's rules, I'm too tired to grab it, but I think next meeting we will reopen that vote to amend it, and so we discussed that about maybe making some tweaks on that, so that point is taken, we could discuss that as well at that time. It just was, we already had too full an agenda to manage that tonight.
So would that, do you want me to send this? Did you look into this flag?
We did not look into that.
Okay.
Please do send it.
I will send you a copy of it with the background about it. Thank you.
No, well, we've already purchased flags, but we've talked about some alternate pathways to make this happen that might look different, but the backup plan could probably be the flags that are purchased, but I don't want us to spend every dollar we spend.
Yeah, no,
we don't spend on the kid, we don't spend on kids, so there may be some alternate ways to do it, so that may be a leadership council school's idea as an alternate way to do that. So that's on for next week, on 3 weeks from now. Okay, really want people to get home before we get flooded, so Jamie.
I had raised my hand when before Sean said something, and you were still on the point of the articles. So this feels after the fact now.
Okay.
And I first want to honor you, and I don't want to make you very angry, but I want this documented for all of time. When you were discussing the articles, I just wanted to name as Jamie Comtois from Putney that I am very sad that after all of our many months from whenever we started these discussions, that we are adding 2 additional folks from Brattleboro. And I want to name that I am continuing, usually I'm very glad we're in Gummerston tonight, but that what has happened is I am no longer going to 2 meetings a month in Putney Central School, but I am primarily driving to Brattleboro, and that Brattleboro and one other town could have majority vote on the new body and make some fairly significant decisions. And that because of the way we do our budget votes and the fact that the majority of the folks who are showing up in the meetings at the budget votes are from Brattleboro, that you very easily could have a dynamic that occurs in our district where there is a transformation of a budget and a change in power on the board that would really have profound impacts on our schools. So I just want to not forget that, because I'm tired and I want to go home too. But it's a sadness for me, even as hard as we've all worked and how much it's been vetted, that we're here. And that I will do my best to show up at every meeting from now until whenever the kids are in college, so that my fears are not realized. But I think it will take all of us to make sure that that is the case.
As always, I think there was a lot of give and take in trying to listen to what was really important to everybody and come out with something that no one loves, but maybe we can live with. And that is kind of what we got here after, I'm on like year 4 of this. So,
Jamie?
Yes, Jody, sorry.
I have a question about the application. I'm not finding anything. Policies, anything like that on the website.
So if there's a policy we're discussing, there's a policy section, and the policies we're discussing, they're on the agenda, and they're attached under the
policy
agenda.
section.
It's up at the top.
I know, I looked up. But what about, you know, like you got this,
I didn't get it.
but this multi-page,
Yeah, that was,
is that gonna go on the website?
that will go on the website, absolutely.
And
tomorrow
where will
morning.
that go?
Probably under the agendas or under information, probably on the cover page, probably on the landing page of WSESD.
Because I've been looking for a lot of things and I can't find it.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
Thank you, Ann.